Thanks, Jim. Well, I made it all the way to Friday. Happy Friday, James Boyd, the amazing Kevin Bowen. I hope you guys are having a good day. And already, we got plenty to look forward to tonight. We're going to finish off the Big Ten regular season for the men. The women are playing a tournament just across the street over there at the field house, down the block, I suppose, a little bit. And lots of high school basketball, lots of news, again, happening in the National Football League. Kevin, crazy things starting to percolate this time of year. How about down in Cincinnati now, and does it affect the Colts moving forward?
Certainly an item to get to here, and next time we talk, we will be finally at the day of, all right, our action's going to meet Chris Ballard's words when we meet on Monday. And James Boyd, I would say yesterday, again, a very small piece to the puzzle, but a piece that you've pointed out before in the Colts opening up some cap space there. So, maybe like the first firework of July 4th, maybe that's what we saw yesterday with the cutting of Raekwon Davis.
I felt like it was what kind of had to happen. You know, he didn't practice, I believe, for the first time until we were in Cincinnati.
I kind of forgot about the high blood pressure thing.
Yeah, that was a weird situation.
That was early in camp, right?
Camp. I mean, it
entire
happened.
Training camp.
Yeah, he didn't. He literally did not practice until we were in Cincinnati for the joint practice ahead of the final preseason game. So no surprise that he was released. They save about $6.5 million in cap space, and now we got to wait and see. Obviously, I think the big fish being Braden Smith and whether he restructures his contract or they move off of him and save about $17 million in cap space.
Yeah, I think the Trey Hendrickson item we'll obviously get to today, but that right there, James, Braden Smith, we should carve out a few minutes for the offensive line today, just because I think there is a multitude of scenarios that could play out with the O-line, and I think, honestly, a lot of it is predicated on the other stuff that happens. I mean, you know, 3 starters at center, right guard, and right tackle, their futures here in Indianapolis, all very much up in the air. And again, I can't recall the last time I've said that about over half of the offensive line. But yeah, the Raekwon Davis era, it's never good when you end a season with almost as many penalties as you had solo tackles.
Yeah, that's tough. And also, the people that replaced him stepped up, too. I mean,
well,
to a certain extent.
I would probably differ on that. I think defensive tackle depth has been an issue for this franchise.
Yeah, I'm not saying they don't need it, but...
And I think that is a need now moving forward. I mean, if you look at it, you cut 2 day 3 draft picks to keep Raekwon Davis for what it's worth at defensive tackle, including one from last season. So, again, that is a need that I don't think will necessarily draw obvious reaction from fans. But with DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, given their ages and how much you rotate on the D-line, an extra defensive tackle or another defensive tackle will certainly be on the list at some point here this offseason.
What do you think of that offensive line, James? Where would you go right now?
Man, it's going to look different, I'll tell you that much. I mean, you could potentially, in theory, have 3 different starters on the offensive line, which you don't want. I would think they want to bring back Will Fries. I would also think that they want to prioritize, restructuring perhaps Braden Smith's contract. But to me, it'll look different. We'll probably see at least 2 different starters. I don't expect Ryan Kelly to be back. Braden Smith, I still think it's kind of a long shot unless he restructures his deal. And then Will Fries, I know everyone kind of expects him to come back, but he'll get the full court press from a lot of teams because he is a young guard. He's a good player, and he's going to get paid. So we'll see.
And we'll talk about that in depth a little bit later on. The Indiana women roll yesterday with a noon tip over Oregon. Sydney Parrish, we had talked about playing against your old team. Pretty nice game, 10.6 rebounds.
Well, and Kelly Graves, the Oregon coach, told us yesterday 2 very different styles, and that certainly played out. Indiana shot the lights out, especially compared to Oregon. Oregon really didn't use the three-point line at all. So noon today over there, Juju Watkins and company. I know Lindsey Gottlieb, the USC head coach, was on with Jake yesterday. So, this is the benefit of having the Big Ten tournament in your own backyard. You pretty much get the number 1 seed in a heavily road environment for USC. So that'll be noon today. And, of course, last night in Atlanta, the Pacers lose to the Hawks. No Tyrese Halliburton, just the second time all season that the Pacers star has not played. I think what was so frustrating for me about last night is, it's kind of a game of runs. And you're sitting there middle of the fourth quarter, and I think the Pacers were up 2, and Trey Young goes to the bench. And, I think when you're playing a team like Atlanta that has such a stark drop off from their number one player to their next player, when that guy is not on the floor, those are minutes you can't lose whatsoever. And you have the lead with Trey Young going to the bench, and 3 minutes later he comes back on the floor and Atlanta's leading by 5. Like, that's just stuff that again, if you would have told me last night, hey, Pacers aren't going to have Halliburton and they lose, I would have said, yeah, well, Trey Young have what, 35, 38? He's capable of that. He didn't have that type of night. You lost sleep over George Niang. And, I love me some former Pacer George Niang. I think my brother-in-law Ross has a George Niang Hickory jersey. But he shouldn't be coming off the bench and getting whatever he got on you there. And, again, that was the difference, I thought. That 3-minute stretch there, up 2 when Trey Young goes to the bench. He comes back on the floor, Niang's hit a couple threes, and you're down 5. And the Pacers just didn't make any real run there the final handful of minutes.
Yeah, I believe Niang had 12 in the fourth quarter, and I'm like, when did he turn into the fourth quarter scorer? And he hit shot after shot. I just felt like overall, though, they really did not play.
Guy, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe it's his best friend, and his best friend certainly got his lick back last night with his performance. But I think on top of that, in general, though, they just gave up too many points in the paint. That continues to be an issue for this team, and I wonder just defensively when you're allowing a team to kind of get rolling like that without, obviously your best player is out, but just to not be able to string together some stops, that is a bit concerning. And I do sense a theme here with some of these games where the Pacers can kind of just become disengaged for periods of time, and it doesn't translate obviously to success most of the time. And I think last night is a perfect example of if you give a team, even though they're kind of banged up or not that great, if you give them chance after chance to make some plays, they will because they're pros.
Well, and to that point, I was thinking to myself, okay, no Halliburton, no Mathurin. Those are probably 2 of your worst defenders. So last night should have been a good defensive night and not the, 74 number you give up points in the paint. And when I see points in the paint often, I just think that's a poor perimeter defense night. I mean, I get that some people might look at it and say, hey, your rim protection was bad, et cetera, et cetera. I know Miles Turner was extremely frustrated with himself. Didn't attempt a shot in the second half. Again, a night you don't have Halliburton, even Mathurin. You would expect a little bit more on that front. So this is one of those baseball series. Pacers will be back in action tomorrow night, 7:30 in Atlanta. You've got the Boilers rounded and out. It's their Big Ten slate. They will play for a double bye tonight at the other Assembly Hall. That is 8 o'clock on Fox. And, of course, tomorrow in the Bloomington Assembly Hall, it is a big one for the Indiana Hoosiers. It is as bubbly as a game as you're going to get this time of year. Indiana and Ohio State. If you guys want to look at Joe Lunardi's latest here,
yeah, I got it up.
On the Indiana front, he's got Indiana as team 66. So that would mean in Dayton, they are in the tournament, but in Dayton in the play-in, and he's got Ohio State as team 63. So he's got them out of Dayton in the actual bracket. We touched on this yesterday. The game obviously means a ton for both teams, but for the resume, it would help out Ohio State even more because that would be a road quad 1 win Ohio State would get, whereas Indiana would be a quad 2 game, and that if they were to lose it, it'd be the first time all season actually they've lost anything outside of the quad 1. So just a monumental game in Bloomington tomorrow. 3:45, and I think from a seeding standpoint, for those wanting to plan ahead for next week, the winner is in that noon Thursday game. So the winner will be exactly where the Indiana women were yesterday, that 8-9 noon game, and then the loser would slide into the nightcap, and I want to say you play an extra night if you're the 10 seed. I believe the 10 seed would start on Wednesday night, so not only a huge game bubble-wise, but for the Big Ten tournament and for our listening audience and people that kind of plan around that, it would also have some implications there.
Yeah, they've had. I mean, speaking of their opponent, Ohio State's had some cardiac game as of late. Knocked off USC 87-82 and then won in double overtime against Nebraska 116-114 to kind of keep their tournament hopes alive. And again, I always lean into the villain angle. You have a chance to rip their hearts out at home. And so that is what they're coming to do to you, and you have a chance to return the favor, I suppose. And so I'm expecting a very, hostile environment, very ramped up environment, and they probably need it too because it gets bleak if they don't pull out this win. I'll say that.
All right, coming up in a moment as we continue on the Fan Morning Show, interesting article coming out in the Indianapolis Monthly. We may talk about that through the day as well. I will just say that there are folks on the cover like Peyton Manning, Reggie Miller, Caitlin Clark, Larry Bird, Jeff Gordon, Lily King, Major Taylor. We'll tell you what that's all about as well. Busy day ahead on a Friday here at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
What would a Trey Hendrickson trade look like? We'll be discussing that a whole lot here in the 7 o'clock hour, but our morning checkdown will begin with some hoops. Last night in the ATL, it was the Tyrese Halliburton-less Anthony Richardson. Unbelievable why I said that. I have no idea why I said
It's early
that.
in the morning on a Friday, Kev.
Yeah, indeed it is. The Tyrese Halliburton-less, thank you, Mark, deserve it. Indiana Pacers, they lose 124-118. The Olay defense seemed to be too frequent for Rick Carlisle last night.
Well, we gave up 74 paint points in the game, and I think that's the most compelling stat from this. A lot of the other stats look pretty even, but the paint points are a big problem. And, down the stretch, we're fouling down the stretch. That contributes to some of the points in the last quarter. But we got to fight harder, from start to finish. I mean, we had some good stretches, but too many lags.
Pacers will see the Hawks again on Saturday. We'll see about Halliburton, that left hip flexor. Again, he missed just his second game of the season. James Boyd, no shot attempts for Miles Turner in the second half. Your level of care on that?
It's pretty high, especially considering that Tyrese Halliburton didn't play and Miles is one of your better scorers. And I think it just speaks to what you're missing with Halliburton. But on top of that, you got to make sure the big fella gets included.
So again, 7:30 tomorrow night, still in Atlanta. Again, this is a stretch of 6 of 7 on the road. Tonight, 8 o'clock over in Champaign. It's the Boilermakers rounding out their Big Ten slate. They are a 3.5-point underdog. Playing for the double bye here, Jason Benetti, Bill Rafferty on the call for the Fox broadcast. Jeff, what do you want to see in the Purdue season finale?
Just continue to take care of business. They got off that schneid, and they've won a couple of games now. Keep it rolling. Keep the ball in the hands of Smith. Let him do his magic, and just continue to build on what you had going early in the season and get it back.
It is a March Friday. That means a whole lot of basketball. So the slate today, again, Purdue and Illinois, obviously tonight. You've got boys sectional action in the semifinal round tonight. Greg Rakestraw going to join us at 8 o'clock over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse at noon today. Terry Moore and the IU women, they advance. I would assume they are fine tournament-wise in any bubble sort of talk. They could obviously improve their seeding as they've got the number 1 USC Trojans and the star of Juju Watkins today. I would assume plenty of cream and crimson. Although, again, I like those black jerseys they were rocking yesterday. Plenty of cream and crimson in the building today. That is a noon game. And I must say, guys, I'm going to say this to Greg Rakestraw when he joins us at 8 o'clock. You know something that makes me sad?
What makes you sad, Kevin?
I feel like the state of Indiana lacks a mid-major team in the tournament a lot lately. Now, that is a very probably nerdy thing to say.
That is sad.
But, I'm a sucker for the mid-major in March. I love it. I can't get enough of the storyline. I eat it up. If the Bowen family were to have a third kid, Golke Bowen, I feel like could be a possibility. I am obsessed.
It'd be quite the hairline.
I was going to say, I think the wife would veto that.
Luckily,
We should talk to Mark about that.
We got some help, Mark, with We Grow Hair Indy. But I bring all that up to say last night we had a lot of mid-majors in the state of Indiana lose. We had Fort Wayne season come to an end. We had Indiana State season come to an end. We had Evansville season come to an end. Obviously, earlier this week we had IU Indy. And I feel like in the state of Indiana, we have not had a true mid-major in the tournament in quite some time. And it makes me sad.
It's Valpo or bust at this point in time, right?
Well,
I think they
Ball
won last
State
night.
is like a
Yeah.
long
long shot.
But yes, Valpo did win. They'll have to win 3-3. I don't know. There's times, and I don't know, I'm like, is Valpo in the state or is Valpo in other parts of the state? It just it makes me sad. So that's
Get on
our
the Crusaders train, Kev.
that's our
That's your
mid-major
really
update.
little brother, not too far away from South Bend. That's what that is.
But Valpo is the last team to do it. 2015. That's the last time we have had one of those IUPUI, IU Indy, Fort Wayne, Ball State, Evansville. Obviously, Indiana State was very close last year. It's been a while, and it pains me.
Yeah, well, I will correct Mark that they're the Beacons now.
No more
Yeah.
Crusaders?
No more Crusaders. They are the Beacons. Beacons of hope.
Well, that's about all we got.
Maybe
at
they
this
need to
point
be
here.
the Crusaders again because they were pretty good when they were.
They were. Certainly, they've had some beautiful
Go
March
back.
moments. Northern Iowa for them tonight in the Missouri Valley Tournament. All right, on the other side, we saw a Colts news item yesterday, and then could we see another? Trey Hendrickson has plenty of ties here to what this coaching staff looks like. What would a trade compensation be? How would it make sense for the Colts? We'll discuss all of that coming up next. This is the Fan Morning Show here on a Friday. Kevin Bowen, Jeff Rickard, James Boyd, and Mark Dyson.
Don't fall for that, man. Don't fall
It's
for
true.
That. Nah.
Dude, you know how much I've had going on this week?
He wanted us to sing happy birthday. He just
No.
had to figure out a
I would
cool
appreciate
way
if we
to
didn't
celebrate.
even mention it.
Well, no, now we're mentioning it. Jeff is talking off air. You want to talk about this right now?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's absurd. I don't believe it.
See, this is why I wasn't going to say anything.
No.
Nope,
No,
nope.
no.
My mouth
It's too late.
Share this story, Jeff.
Please.
You want me to set you up where I say,
Uh.
"How old are you?" and then you say,
All right.
you go on.
So it's obviously been a very busy time around here the last couple of weeks, and a lot going on. We're getting ready for the month of May, and we're working on some other things that'll come your way this summer. And there's all kinds of good stuff coming. I had lunch yesterday with the head coach of the Fishers Freight, the new indoor football league team over there. He's there, and that's going to be fun. And we did all that stuff, and my wife was out of town, and so I've run the kids all over the place this week. I mean, all the dads know exactly what I'm talking about. Work, everything else. I got a text just a moment ago from my sister-in-law, and I remembered today's my birthday.
I'm not buying it. I am not buying this. I am not buying this.
You get to the point
James
where you don't
Boyd
want
wants a
them.
birth certificate here. Is this a Danny Almonte situation?
Exactly.
You
He
get
is-
to the point where they're just not that big a deal anymore.
I mean, not that big of a deal.
Happy
But
birthday,
yeah,
Jeff.
happy
I mean,
birthday.
damn. Jeez.
Jeez, man.
You care to share the age on air? Or
A lot older than you guys. A lot older
Fair
than
enough.
you guys.
if you added James's age to mine,
We're close.
All right.
We're probably close.
I'm 35.
No,
James,
we're not there
You
29?
are
29?
29.
I'm not there. So
Boom.
So that's
There we
what,
go.
64 with the
see, I thought both
rough
of you
math?
guys were a little bit younger. So
Yeah. Well, everyone always tells me
good.
that. Maybe I need to
Oh,
mature.
morning radio age you very quickly.
I
So
would.
here I
I
am.
literally, Kevin. I've always. I don't know why. I peg you at like 27, 28, 29.
Well, the hairline would argue a little bit older.
Yeah, but you never.
and
You have a hat on all the time.
Also, my right
got-
foot.
And you got Indy grow hair.
The doctor said, yeah, your right foot looks like a X-ray of a 55-year-old. Well, happy birthday. Jeez.
Thanks.
Yeah, last Thursday. Oh, you forgot your birthday, didn't you, Frank?
See, I'm not alone.
Jeff is Frank the Tank.
not alone.
I would take that as a compliment, frankly.
Yeah, I'll take that too. And good morning, Mark Dykton. I know you got a big weekend with the girls coming up. Anything in your immediate TV or sports viewing future?
Probably watch some basketball. Obviously, keep my eyes on Twitter with NFL rumors for free agency, and watch some wrestling again. That's what we do in the Dykton households. Watch some wrestling, and then I get my ass kicked by a couple of 3-year-old girls.
Do you ever catch them like going top rope off the back of the couch on
My
each
oldest
other?
is throwing elbows like Randy Savage. My middle one jumps her whole body weight on my back, so I'm gonna need like a spinal surgeon by the time I hit like the 40s.
Oh my goodness, it's all good stuff though. But and I know you are going to a Fuel game tonight, right, James?
I will be going to my first Fuel game. I got a last-minute invite. I don't even know who they're playing or what I'll actually be watching because I'm not that well-versed in hockey. But if they drop the gloves and get to fighting, your boy is all in for this. All
Well,
in.
that's a beautiful building up there.
You've been over
Fisher's
there,
Event
Kev?
Center, Fisher's Freight, of course. Jeff
Yeah.
just mentioned that. That's where
Dixie
they'll be
Wooten
playing.
is the head coach, former UTEP quarterback, but good
And
stuff.
that starts relatively soon, right?
Yeah, coming up very quickly here. The 29th of March is their first game.
Yeah, I remember. I used to go to quite a few Indiana Firebirds games back in the day, so looking forward to that. So, James Boyd, I think you'll enjoy the Fisher's Event Center. Obviously, where the Indy Ignites play as well. I think I'm wearing an Indy Ignite shirt, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I am.
We got you covered. Yeah, I got the magnetic schedule for the Freight. You're going to the Fuel tonight. You got your T-shirt on. We're good. We're good out there. And as you mentioned, though, we got a lot of Colts stuff to dig into today. There's all kinds of this roster's got to have a huge shakeup on both sides of the ball, right?
James, what does the Trey Hendrickson trade look like?
I was asked this question for The Athletic, and I said this year's second-round pick and next year's third-round pick.
And you got to pay him.
And I got to pay him, which he wouldn't accept the trade. Well, he wouldn't want to come to a team, or a team wouldn't want to get him without locking him up long-term.
So, Hendrickson's led the league in sacks each of the last 2 years. 30 years old. We should mention that. Obviously, Lou Anarumo was his defensive coordinator. The connections don't stop there, though. Charlie Partridge, the Colts defensive line coach, was the head coach at Florida Atlantic, which is where Trey Hendrickson played in college. There's a lot that kind of points to legit, real connections when you lay all of that out. You want to go a little bit further. You know, back when Gus Bradley took over as defensive coordinator, we saw the Colts make a trade for a pass rusher that Gus knew very well, in Yannick Ngakoue. Again, would Lou Anarumo have? I demand that necessarily. I think that's a question I would have. Obviously, the connection is certainly very obvious. So I would be very, very curious how this is going to play out. By all accounts, last year the Colts pursued Daniil Hunter in free agency, a bit of a similar age. Now, again, the difference in that one, that was a free agency pursuit. Obviously, that cost a lot, but you wouldn't be giving up, as James just pointed out, a second rounder this year and a third rounder next year. So, boy, there's a lot here. But I do have one just major question mark on it of this is a move that would take up a ton of resources. A ton. And how does it help Anthony Richardson?
Good question. One small correction. TJ Watt actually led the league in sacks in 2023. So it's not back-to-back years.
Oh, so I think if you combine the 2 years, right?
Yeah,
17,
yeah. So just for any, if we have some random Pittsburgh fan, don't yell at KB too much. But to your point, I get what you're saying, Kevin. And in my mind, this doesn't seem like a realistic move. I just, boss was like, hey, you want to get in on some of this trade rumor talk? And I was like, why not? I like to pick the brain a little bit. But I don't think it's realistic, but I wouldn't hate it because to me, it kind of sends a message to them like, hey, we're done being complacent.
Why isn't it realistic in your eyes?
Just draft capital. I wonder if giving up like a second-round pick this year and potentially more draft capital this year or whatever, to your point about how that helps Anthony, it's like, could you use that on an offensive lineman? Could you use that on a tight end? Could you use that to help the guy who we all know it all kind of revolves around him? And so if you make a move like that to bring Trey Hendrickson in, to me, that feels more like you're the Buffalo Bills. You're a team that's kind of been on the doorstep, and you're trying to find that last piece to get you over the hump. Whereas with the Colts, I kind of feel like it's the inverse, where you're trying to get the first piece or the main piece, rather, which is the quarterback, situated and figured out.
And, Kevin, quarterbacks and defensive ends, if you can get the right rookie in the draft, now you've got a couple of years where you're not breaking the bank and guys are getting better. But now I'll play devil's advocate, too. How does it help Anthony Richardson? They couldn't get off that defense couldn't get off the field last year.
Not fair.
Couldn't get off
Certainly.
the field.
Right. And unfortunately for Cincinnati's sake, neither could they with Trey Hendrickson either.
Yeah.
So I just, we played the math game a little bit earlier in the week of $35 million. That has grown since we had that discussion. We mentioned the Raekwon Davis move earlier in the show. Now you're north of $40 million with that cap space. So, Hendrickson, by all accounts, he wants an extension. I think right now, what is it, $15 million maybe for next year?
Yes.
They could be looking at close to 30.
So, all of this, okay, let's just play that out. If that now rises to 30, that's 30 of 41 million. James said a second-round pick this year. I mean, when you start to count your resources, okay, that leaves 11 million for what? You need a quarterback move. Does that mean Will Fries walks? Does that mean obviously it would mean, I think, Dayo Dangbo walks. It starts to add up. I am a fan of swings on rookie contracts, but I think I'm more so swings on rookie contracts when that directly impacts the quarterback. And I get indirectly, well, again, if you have a top sacker, you give the ball to Richardson a little bit more. But, is this helping Richardson's accuracy? Is this helping him become more of a consistent passer? Those sorts of questions you would still have there. So, again, there are connections. Certainly the Colts, went after Daniil Hunter last year. I don't know if it's exactly apples to apples just because the draft pick plus cap space is a lot. I think at times we forget about the double whammy with some of these moves here, but certainly from a connection standpoint, Anarumo and Charlie Partridge, there are reasons why I think the Colts would have some interest.
Remind me, too, guys, the Colts have all of their normal picks this year, right? 7 rounds, 14th.
Yes.
Right?
One in each round.
That's
Yeah,
it.
nothing additional.
Yeah.
But, Chris Ballard, we are not going to sit in that room, Kevin Bowen, and only decipher 7 picks. I would not bet on that. I would love that, but it's not going to happen, in my opinion.
You put 8.5 as the over/under for total picks?
I think that's where I'm at. I mean, my first year on the
trade ups. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I always root for trade ups, honestly, because my first year on the beat, I think they picked 12 people, and I was like, by day 3, I'm like, all right, a lot of people.
Any hesitancy of a 30-year-old rusher, and just when that would go? I mean, again, he is. If you look at the last 2 years, nobody's had more sacks in the NFL than him. But do you worry at all? Like, does 30-year-old red flag pass rusher hit you as much as 30-year-old running back, for example, or something along those lines?
Yeah, again, this is where I just feel like a team that's further along will make this move because in my mind, let's say he plays out this year of his contract and then you start him with an extension. What are we looking at, 2 years? I probably would be hesitant to go longer than 3, and even that feels like, all right, by that point you're going to be 33, going on 34, and I'm paying you $30 million a year, roughly. He is the high end. We saw Max Crosby get $35 million, I think, a year annually on his extension, and Trey Hendrickson isn't Max Crosby, but he's very good, so let's call it $30 million. I don't know if I would do that if I am the Colts, and I don't know what my future kind of holds. I mean, if you're doing this and you're the Ravens, or you're the Bills, or you're a team that's kind of right there, even the Texans or whatever, you have your quarterback figured out, to me it makes more sense that way. But like you said, Kevin, there is a lot of connections here, and I have to imagine, in all seriousness, that they at least will kick the tires and make a few calls just because of personal connections.
Go back to last offseason. The two rumors were, again, they made an offer for Daniil Hunter, and then we saw the Hard Knocks clip of them trading up or wanting to trade up with the Giants. Who exactly was that for? Neighbors, Adunze, Bowers, whoever. One of those three. Obviously, those are two big swings. Those are two uncharacteristic moves for Chris Ballard. When I look at those two moves in regards to this offseason, considering we're now a year further from that, what's happened in the past year? Well, you did draft Latu, for what it's worth, after the Daniil Hunter move. Now, again, Latu didn't have this eye-popping rookie season. I didn't think it was the most alarming rookie season in the world. I don't think he's a bust or anything like that. I think he can still grow into being a nice pass rusher. But the passing offense question is still very much there. So I look at it from last offseason to now this year and think if those two moves are presented to me, I would take the swing at the pass catcher more than the rusher. Because, again, Richardson's status has only had more question marks over the last 12 months than where it was from last season. Because we obviously fall into a rabbit hole when you have a GM that has sat on his hands so much that people are just like, do anything. Do something of note. And, again, do something at a premium position, certainly. And this would be that. But if you are going to get a little bit deeper into the weeds and not just be in the camp of do anything, to me, the direct impact of Richardson is the one where could you walk through an offseason and say, here's your move for Hendrickson and here's Daniel Jones signing? Would that be it? And what does that say to Richardson? Again, where is that further support for your quarterback, period, particularly your young quarterback?
And guys, too, and James, I'll ask you first and then Kevin chime in. If they made a move to get Hendrickson and they got to pay him, is that a complete rebuild on that right side of the offensive line, just from a financial point? And to Kevin's original point, how does that help Anthony Richardson if you now don't have enough money to bring back Braden Smith on a restructured deal, and maybe you get outbid now for fries?
Oh, man.
Right?
Jeff just threw water on everything.
No, but
that's part of the discussion.
It's his birthday, and he can ruin it if he wants to.
I know, but no.
I think it's a very real question. If you were to do this, you pretty much eliminate anything else of note this offseason. And you're going to have to Band-Aid some other areas.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't like neither one of y'all. Okay? Let's just start there. But no.
So you are a fan of this, James?
No, in all seriousness, I would not do this, mainly because of the reason you laid out. And I get it. Part of me looks at it like this. Do something, get some skin in the game, at least show that you're trying to make a win-now move or a big move or something that tangibly changes your team. However, I just think the cost is not worth, the payout in this instance because of what you all laid out. You still got to upgrade at, defensive back, and you can't do all of that in the draft. You can't go get a new tight end, get a new cornerback, and then expect all these rookies to just come in and be stars. I mean, it's not the Eagles we're talking about here. So I understand, but part of me, as the reporter who hasn't covered a lot of headlining moves, selfishly, I'm like, I wouldn't mind a little headline here or there to kind of, ease the tension a bit. But I mean, we'll see what they do. But I consider this to be a long shot. But again, I would at least make the call. I'm not, just going to sit idly by it's not realistic at all. Well, I just talked about this with Mark when I was walking in this morning. Nothing's unrealistic after the Luka trade. So I am willing to talk about anything.
There are no meathead trades. I've ruled that out now. That's happened. You can come on the air and propose any trade. As long as the owner and GM sign off on it, you're good. There's no bad trade.
Corey asks here, are we sure Hendrickson's not better than Crosby? Led the league in sacks over the last 2 years. Sure, he's not the personality that Max Crosby is, but in terms of production, I'd say he's better than Crosby. I'd probably push back on that. First off, Crosby's younger, several years younger, and also I think Max Crosby is a very good run defender. And if you're really going to get into the weeds of comparing those two, that's not something that Hendrickson, I think, does, certainly at the level as a rusher. Now, he's a very good rusher. No debating that. Certainly one of the best in the entire NFL. But I do think Max Crosby, like that deal for Crosby, which is what? It was well north of $30 million annually. First off, I don't think you would have to meet that level for Hendrickson. I would hope not, given the age. And again, I think Crosby's a better player on first and second down. Now, again, you bring up the offensive line earlier. Ryan Kelly's a free agent.
Yes,
Will
sir.
Fries might be the top guard on the open market. And Braden Smith has a $19 million cap hit. If I set the over-under at 1.5, how many of those three are back?
One.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's play this out.
And I think we're hoping it's Fries, the two of us, correct?
Yeah, I mean, he's
So then you are handing starting keys then to Bordellini at center, and then Gonzalez at right tackle.
It certainly changes your draft outlook, too, doesn't it?
yeah. I would hand the keys to those two, and I
Does
would
it change
draft
the 14th overall pick?
possibly. No, seriously. If there is a right tackle, I know like Tate Ratledge out of Georgia is one people are high on, experienced player. Started a ton of games at right tackle at Georgia. Obviously has had some success there, back-to-back national championships. He's someone I would consider. And I think it could be a sneaky need if you do end up, moving on from Braden Smith. But again, right tackle at 14 is
It's tough.
it is not a sexy pick, I'll say that. But
There'll be some booze that night, don't you think?
I mean, there'll be booze either way. I feel like, booze and booze because of where the Colts are at the moment. But, yeah, KB, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
And I think it was a throwaway line, but I do want to make sure we go back to Chris Ballard a couple weeks ago at the Combine. At one point there, he mentioned, and we feel like Tanner Bordellini played well at guard. And I kind of walked away from the presser being like, I wonder why. Like, I've never looked at Bordellini as a guard. I've always thought of him as center. And I get that there's some centers and guards interchangeable, but like Bordellini's body type's not some like mauler. He's thought to be much more of an athletic guy, moving at center. But I bring that up to say this: if Fries walks, is there a scenario where they say, hey, Bordellini, you go play right guard, and then you do bring back Ryan Kelly?
No, I see what you're saying.
So if Fries walks, what do they do? I guess answer that question for me.
Oh, Lord. This is.
I think and I bring this up not to like put you in a bad spot,
No.
James. I bring this up to say I think offensive line is a lot more complicated than fans realize. Like I think there are domino effects. There are, if you bring back Braden Smith, does that mean Matt Gonzalez maybe plays right guard if Will Fries does leave in free agency? Like,
But here's my thing, though, about what you just said. It's a lot more complicated than we think, and I think switching positions is a lot harder than we give it credit for. So Bordellini, you drafted him. He starts at center for a few games, gets his feet underneath him, gets valuable experience. You tell him, hey, go play right guard. And some people might think, oh, you just move to the right. No, it is totally different. Your responsibilities, your assignments, your body usage, all of these things. So I think it's just a really, really hard thing to ask of a young player. It's like, oh, wait a second. We actually don't need you for this. Go do that instead. And I get it. It is a possibility. You have to, weigh all your options. But I just wonder if you do something like that without possibly drafting a right guard or, going to finding one in free agency, do you hurt your previous investment because you're not allowing that investment to grow? I feel like I'm talking to like my Roth IRA person right now.
This is the Rubik's Cube that they're trying to solve over there on West 56th.
No, seriously.
It's literally a Rubik's Cube.
I mean, I have said this, and this is not some groundbreaking news, not to Jeff's point. Team building in football is the hardest. And when it comes to football or basketball, I know baseball is pretty hard too as well, but it is so hard because you can get so many things right. And I believe the Colts have gotten, running back. They have a star. Wide receiver, I feel like they're in a really good spot overall. Obviously DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart are great interior defensive linemen, but it doesn't matter because you haven't hit the main things. And so to kind of put a button on the offensive line thing, you do want to have more security, which is why, I really will put the full court press on Will Fries. Within reason, you can't pay the guy $25 million a year, But assuming he's in that 15 to 18 million dollar range, you might want to pony up to make sure he stays put.
Is that going to be another case, though, where the Colts are locking up big money to positions that other teams don't value as much? Like, it's another...
Good point.
But
But
they've locked up money in all these positions that other teams just don't value as much. Now, I get it, offensive line is at a premium these days, but then you're going to have money in Quentin Nelson and then Will Fries and Jonathan Taylor. And
it would be scary to look at how much the Colts are paying at their 2 guard spots compared to the rest of the NFL. I think that's a good point that Mark brings up.
Yeah.
One thing to add, going back to the Hendrickson note, if indeed you do that, to me, it would have to mean Braden Smith's gone.
Yeah, there is no restructure. I mean,
just because of
that
the
money.
financial situation.
Yeah, I mean, he'd have to play for free, but that's not going to happen.
You would need that. So, again, very interesting how all this is going to play out. The Colts did cut Raekwon Davis yesterday. I think this is a foregone conclusion. I tweeted out he had little impact from the Colts, and someone tweeted back at me, that's a compliment to the word little. Yeah, that's probably
tough.
fair. Again, I brought it up earlier in the show. It's never a good season when you have 5 penalties and 7 solo tackles. Those are 2 numbers that probably shouldn't be next to each other.
Yeah, I mean, we
when you
look
play
back
the
at
defensive line.
last offseason, KB, he probably was the biggest free agent signee outside of Joe Flacco, like literally and financially, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah, 2-year, $14 million.
We'll go back to something you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, though, too. You can't forget about competition at backup quarterback. If you truly want to bring in somebody to compete, that's going to cost you a little bit of money, Kev.
Well, yeah, again, if you're going to make a notable move, to me, that's where the Braden Smith thing gets really, really difficult. Really difficult. And we've talked about the Smith situation before. What is super intriguing about to me, about letting Smith go is it would open up a large sum of money that you don't need to spend necessarily at that position. And that's not always the given situation. Sometimes you have an old dude that's the big contract, but by cutting that guy, you still need to find the answer there. Again, Matt Gonzalez would be a bit of a risk, but like you did draft him in the 3rd round last year, and he started 8 games. So, if you're drafting offensive linemen in the 3rd round, and if I'm not mistaken, James, didn't they trade up for him?
Yes.
That's a super rare Chris Ballard thing.
Yeah.
So they really like him. Then you obviously feel like that guy can be a starter for you.
Greg in Twitter mentions that the Trey Hendrickson stuff, are we overthinking what the value could be? Because we saw guys like what Luka went for, what Deebo Samuel went for. Will we be surprised at the return that Trey Hendrickson fetches Cincinnati if and when he's dealt?
James, you did the story. I think it was you and a few other colleagues all chimed in on trade value. Do you remember what your other colleagues said? Were you guys all you brought up 2nd rounder this year, 3rd rounder next year? Were you guys all in that general ballpark?
Yeah. So from our Atlanta Falcons beat writer, he gave up a 2026 second round pick this year, 5th round pick this year as well. The Commanders, they would give up the 29th pick, a 2nd round pick this year as well, a defensive tackle, Jonathan Taylor for Hendrickson, and also their 49th pick. So, I mean, it was all generally centered around, I feel like, a 3rd round pick or a 2nd round pick, and then kind of going from there. I looked at it like this. If Myles Garrett, in theory, is worth a 1st round pick, then Trey Hendrickson is not. So that's kind of where I started my baseline, was like, all right, what's beyond a 1st round pick? What's a little bit less than that? But, I mean, I don't think that we'll be too surprised by what he fetches, mainly because, unlike Deebo Samuel in particular and a few other people, he's coming off a great season, and he's been a great player recently. Like, I mean, Deebo Samuel was
a runner-up for defensive player.
He looks pretty good.
Exactly. And Deebo Samuel, on the other hand, I believe he was like an all-pro, but that was 2021. It's 2025 now. He's no longer that player.
Here's what the Athletic, they went back and documented appropriate type guys and what they've gotten for trades out of season the last 4 instances of this. Matthew Judon was picked up for a 3rd round pick, went from New England to Atlanta. Hassan Reddick went from Philadelphia to the Jets for a 3rd round 2026 pick. Brian Burns went from Carolina to the Giants for a 2nd and a 5th. Khalil Mack, you'll remember, Mark, went from Chicago to the Chargers for a 2nd and a 6th.
Yeah, I mean, when you rattle off those names, I think James is pretty much in the ballpark of it. A 2nd rounder this year, a future third. Maybe a hair rich for my liking, but you could be spot on.
That's the market.
Yeah, I mean, that's the market for a premium position. So much more on this. Again, noon on Monday. That's when you will start to see the phrase of agreed to terms, and the activity for the Colts usually has them passing out water bottles on the bench when Monday and Tuesday of free agency week rolls around, but Chris Ballard's words have been different. Will they actually be on the floor this time? We'll wait and see. 4 o'clock Wednesday, right, James? That's a new league year?
Yes, sir.
So that's when you'll actually get pen to paper and the finalization of those deals. Greg Rakestraw in a few. If you missed it last night, the Pacers lose 124-118 down there in Atlanta. No Tyrese Halliburton, just the second game missed of his entire season. Left hip flexor. Said this to you guys to lead off the show. I think the most frustrating element to me last night is the Pacers played with the lead, I would say, for a decent amount of that game.
Yeah.
They're up 2 with 8 to go, and I see Trae Young go to the bench, and I'm thinking this is your opportunity to, step on the throat a little bit here. And what happens? George Niang hits 2 threes with Trae Young on the bench, and when he comes back on the floor, the Hawks are up 5. And I think when you play a team like Atlanta, where there is such a steep drop-off from their star to their next guy, you can't have that. I get Halliburton's not on the floor, but theoretically you should be a better defensive team without Halliburton and Mathurin out there. So I think that was a disappointing about last night is, a loss without Tyrese isn't the end of the world, but how it happened. Like, it wasn't Trae Young going off.
It was there to be had.
It was George Niang going off.
Yeah, I think that's the first time in 2 or 3 seasons Atlanta's beaten Indiana home or road, isn't it? It's been a while.
Really? Has it been that?
It's been a minute. But, the last 5 minutes and 55 seconds, I think it was 102-101, and then it was a 23-16 run down the stretch for Atlanta. And, you're not thinking Niang is the guy that's going to bury you in that spot.
Shout out to the Iowa State legend. Shout out to Ross Lubbers and his Hickory George Niang jersey, my brother-in-law.
I know Halliburton probably was a hater last night, seeing his best friend
to be.
go off, and he
Had
can't
to
do
be.
anything about it. But
Niang's game is just so fun to watch.
I mean, he's like the guy. I mean, not to disrespect him because he would show up at the YMCA and destroy everybody, but he's like the YMCA guy.
100%.
Just plays.
And, I mean, you leave him open, it's like, why'd you leave me open?
Niang and Luka, I think, have my appetite. I think they'd like our Dino Nugs.
Yeah.
James go party with Luka.
I was about to say, I don't know
know.
about Luka might like a little bit more than Dino Nugs, according to the Mavericks. So
He needs a tall Pilsner with
yeah,
it. Is what you're saying.
yeah, exactly. But
Maybe
I mean,
something harder.
getting back to the Pacers, though, man, 74 points in the paint, that usually does not lead to good things, when it comes to the outcome of the game. And I get it. You're trying to, really rally around Trae Young and keep him corralled, but I felt like he just kind of picked them apart. And obviously they got some big contributions down the stretch that really, to me, overshadowed what Siakam was doing on the offensive end, because he had one of the most efficient 35-point games you'll see.
Jarris Walker did start. We should mention that.
Yep.
I think there was a little bit of a question once Mather and Halliburton are out. How would Rick handle the starting lineup? Rick loves to do this. He loves to stick that second unit. He doesn't want to break up that second unit.
Right.
And so McConnell, Shepard, Obi Toppin, Thomas Bryant, he wanted that group together. So that pushed Jarris out of the rotation to actually starting. 8 points and 7 boards in 25 minutes. He had a lot of rebounds early on for Jarris Walker there. So again, tomorrow night back in Atlanta. We'll see if Mathurin, it's now 4 straight missed games for him, and we'll see about Halliburton. For what it's worth, a couple of back-to-backs next week. So some of these injured guys, probably worth monitoring that. Again, both those back-to-backs. It's Milwaukee the second night of the back-to-back. So how Rick Carlisle decides to handle that will be something to watch.
All right, coming up in a moment, big weekend of basketball. We got high school sectionals later on tonight. We got the final weekend of the Big Ten regular season for the men. The women are playing their tournament over at the Field House. And, of course, still some games ahead for the Pacers. We'll talk about all of it next as we continue the Fan Morning Show on a Friday, along with Mark Dykton, James Boyd, Kevin Bowen. I'm Jeff Rickard, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
8 o'clock on the first Friday in March. And if I'm looking at this correctly, I think we'll be all right. Weather-wise across the state tonight, it is a busy one from a sectional standpoint. I think they broke fire code earlier in the week at the Eric Clark Activity Center. But we got the two most important people in the gym, James Boyd and Greg Rakestraw.
Oh,
James,
no.
James, I'm going to put you below Rake, if that's all right.
No,
with
I'm
you.
going to put myself below Kyle Neddenrick as
we
well.
should put Kyle Neddenrick
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Yeah, we should. Fire code, Greg Rakestraw tonight at the Eric Clark Activity Center again?
Let's hope so. Let's hope Hamilton Southeastern brings a great crowd. Let's hope Zions brings a great crowd. I know Fishers is going to. That's not going to be a problem. I know Noblesville is going to. It's not going to be a problem. Westfield brought a lot of people, and there were, frankly, a lot of neutral fans there to see 1 versus 2 or 1 versus 3, depending on what poll that you subscribe to. But I would imagine if we're not sold out, we'll be awfully darn close.
I remember back in the day, the Odin matchups for sure, Inskeep would bring in those bleachers atop at Carmel. Do they do that for the sectional, or they just stick to their seats?
Buddy, they're there. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They're in use all the time, yes. We have shoehorned every possible seat in that building that we can.
Greg Rakestraw joining us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Lots of high school basketball in the next couple of weeks. This has got to be like Christmas for you. What are you most looking forward to?
Just the caliber of matchups, just the crowds, the atmosphere. I mean, Tuesday night was tremendous. And so, believe it or not, this is actually when it kind of slows down for me, just because this is the last Friday night of high school basketball of the season. Everything is Saturdays over the course of the next 4 weeks. So, yes, I'm looking forward to it. Yes, I'm looking forward to the storylines. One of the things that I like to see this week is who can end like those lengthy sectional droughts. Because of the advent of the Class era and just the passage of time, there aren't that many, schools that have never won a boys basketball section that are left. Believe it or not, that was Westfield until 3 years ago. They played in over 100 tournaments and not won a sectional until Braden Smith led them to one in 2022. And so, like, the longest sectional drought of the schools we've got tonight is Hamilton Southeastern. They haven't won one since 2014. That was the year after names like Gary Harris and Zach Urban had gotten through Hamilton Southeastern. But if you go other parts of the state, for example, northwest of Indianapolis, Clinton Prairie, they're one of the top teams in 1A. They had a huge win on Wednesday against their big rivals in Carroll. They have not won a boys basketball sectional since 1982. And so you've got some streaks like that. And so during this week, that's one of the things I pay the most attention to.
Out of curiosity, Greg, have you called one of Braylon Mullins' games at Greenfield Central at all?
Just a handful of those this year. Yes, sir.
What do you think of their squad and their opportunity to do something special? Because I think it's so cool that this 5-star recruit didn't go to La Lumiere and didn't leave his hometown. He kind of stayed to do it with his guys he grew up with.
Well, part of it, too, is that, and forgive me for not knowing where his mom, Katie, went to high school. I assume she went to Greenfield Central. I know his dad is a Greenfield Central guy, and his dad is a sheriff's officer in Hancock County as well. So I always tell, and he's got 2 twin brothers that are a year behind him. I'm like, listen, folks, Braylon's not going anywhere. He's going to go away for college to UConn, but in high school, he was not leaving. He was going to be there. And yes, I wish we saw a lot more of that, frankly, than we do now. In terms of the squad around him, they're kind of lined up with shooters. The addition of Mikey Johnson gives another athlete. Again, they have not got out of the sectional yet, and that is more indicative of the quality teams in their sectional, and that continues again this year. Now, if I have the bracket memorized up in Muncie correctly, they got kind of the better half of the draw. In other words, there's 2 other really good teams in their group, that is Anderson and Mount Vernon, and they play each other tonight. And so Greenfield, in theory, will play the winner of that game tomorrow night up in Muncie. It is not a guarantee that even though Braylon is without doubt 1,000% the best player in the state and is Mr. Basketball, they've already printed the jersey, his name is on the trophy, they are not guaranteed to get out of that sectional because Anderson's really good, and Mount Vernon has played as well as anybody has down the stretch of the season, not named Fishers.
So I'm assuming I'll probably see you not this Saturday, but next Saturday at Newcastle if you're calling any games out there. I love that yearly trip for myself. Visit the Basketball Hall of Fame, stop by the Hoosier Gym. And I have to ask, what is your – because you told me to go to what is it, Mancino's? Is that how you say it?
Absolutely correct. That's the place to go.
There
and
you
then get a
go.
little
What is
coffee
your
at the press in
go-to
between sessions.
Mancino's order? Because this is a hot button issue in the high school basketball world, and I have learned to kind of do as everyone else does. And they usually tell me when I walk in, I'll ask somebody, "Hey, what should I try this time?" And they'll get me right.
Page 2 of the menu is usually what I order, JB. So Mancino specializes in grinders, and they've got like 30 different versions of them, and what they would call a grinder really is kind of like, more of a sub or a stromboli in other places. And so the pizza grinder is usually the way that I would go at Mancino's.
I love me, Greg Rakestraw. Greg Rakestraw's with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. You heard his voice earlier as we replayed the shot heard around Hamilton County from 2012. Gary Harris. Was that a Friday night, Rake, or was that a Wednesday night?
No, that was a 17 sectional back then because North Central was in it. That was the lone game on the opening night of the sectional on Tuesday night, and that might be where the phrase "Fire Marshal Full" got coined because obviously you played the audio clip of that. The video clip is from our slash cam because everyone in the building was standing and our game cam was basically showing the back of three dudes' heads at that point in time. So we had to go over to our slash cam, our cutaway, our angled replay cam, which is why the game cam version of that, when you watch it on YouTube, is from a diagonal angle next to our broadcast location. It was the only camera we had that had a clear view of the action because everyone was standing because that game was so bonkers insane.
God bless the mill, baby. Greg Rakestraw with us here, Payless Liquors Hotline. Rake, you brought up Josh Mullins earlier. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was on the last IUPUI tournament team. Is that correct?
That is correct. 2003, which remarkably is 22 years ago and counting at this point.
Okay, I bring that up, and sorry to turn it sad, but I wish we had more mid-major runs
you're not kidding.
in this state. And I don't know, maybe we'll save that conversation for you and I, 37 miles next year when we make our annual trek up to Notre Dame. But last night, I'm just watching all these scores, and boom, Evansville loses, and Indiana State loses, and Fort Wayne loses. And I get they were long shots. But, Rake, when you look at it, Valpo made the tournament, I guess it would have been a decade ago, and that's the last men's mid-major we've had of the 6 schools. IU Indy, of course, Valpo, Fort Wayne, Ball State, Evansville, obviously Indiana State on the doorstep last year. That just makes me sad, Rake. I want a mid-major from this state dancing.
I know, and I had the first Southern Illinois game in Indiana State, which was all of 4 days ago. I did that game on Sunday. Illinois was terrible in that game. Indiana State led by 30. And so my guess is and SIU's record was kind of better than they played. So I kind of wonder if they just said, you know what, let's kind of save this for Thursday. And clearly they did. Matthew Graves getting 14 wins on a complete rebuild, not exactly a bad thing. Now, the question that every team faces at every level, and frankly, it's Division I on down, how much is next year's team going to look like this year's team?
Right.
For example, Indiana State had 3 seniors that are now out of eligibility. Those guys are done. Other than that, who's staying, who's going? Paul Casaro is going to go through the exact same thing at IU Indy. He has 2 players that are out of eligibility. It's his leading 2 scorers. His backcourt that came with him from the University of Indianapolis. And so now it's you're already kind of, you have some ideas as to who you might be looking at in the transfer portal. But how many of you got to recruit your own guys first. And once you said, okay, this is who we are keeping, now how many names and faces can you add? The team of the group that I think, harbored legitimate NCAA tournament hopes in terms of winning their league and just seemingly stumbled down the stretch was Purdue Fort Wayne. They were second in the Horizon League standings for a good chunk of the year. They finished as the 5th seed, which meant they had to go on the road the opening round and got beaten a close game by Youngstown State. None of those other teams really kind of harbored legitimate NCAA tournament hopes this year, with the exception of Purdue Fort Wayne. The way that they kind of stumbled down the stretch really was a bit of a surprise given how they played when I saw them back at the end of January.
Trey Hendrickson rumors, Rake, are you in the camp of Chris Ballard, just do something for once, or are you in the camp of that's a little bit more complicated than that?
It's probably a little more complicated, but I am in the how about this? Do something, full stop. Go get the man. There is obviously going to be a connection in between he and Lou Anarumo. You're going to know the system, going to know the setup. And I thought you guys in the last segment did a wonderful job. We all worry about they're going to give up a first-round pick. I realize this is now 26 years ago, but the ultimate example of how, frankly, largely overvalued first-round picks are by NFL personnel people. Marshall Faulk got a freaking second and a fifth. You get Marshall Faulk went to St. Louis for Mike Peterson and Brad Scioli. In other words, you don't have to give a first-round pick to get Trey Hendrickson or Hendrickson. So I would say, whether it's a second day or a third day pick this year, another pick next year, this is pass rushers don't hit the market, and my goodness, there are multiples of them hitting the market this year. Please go get one, and it would make the most sense to get the one that knows the scheme and knows the system the best, and that'd be the guy that resides about 100 miles away currently from Indianapolis.
The encyclopedia just dropped a Brad Scioli on us here on this Friday morning. Break, safe travels up 31 tonight. I know you've got the secret parking spot for the Eric Clark Activity Center, and you better believe it, I'll be watching tonight.
Thank you, buddy. JB, where are you going tonight?
I'm actually going to Indy Fuel game tonight. So no high school basketball, but I'm like 50-50 on going to Muncie tomorrow, or Saturday rather, to see potentially Braylon Mullins get out of the sectional for the first time.
And have you been to the Muncie Fieldhouse before?
I have not. So I usually try to pick the game based off of how good it is, and also if I've been there before, and kind of a bucket list type of thing.
You check both boxes. Have fun in Muncie tomorrow.
All right.
That's the GOAT, Greg Rakestraw. Payless Liquors Hotline, sectional semis, and finals, of course, coming up this weekend.
I wish I was going to the Hamilton Southeastern Noblesville game tonight, and I want to see Fishers. Does Zionsville really have a shot against Fishers tonight?
Not in my eyes, and I don't say that as a shot to Zionsville. I mean, obviously it's one game.
Was any chance you had of going to Zionsville anytime soon?
I mean, I've been there before, and honestly, when I went, I want to say it was for a football game right out of like when COVID was happening. It was a very weird season, but I don't say that as a shot to Zionsville. I just think that Fishers is just a cut above pretty much every class. I mean, every team in Class 4A, or really any team in the state. They're that good and they're that balanced. So as an underdog, I feel like, mentality, I would love to see an upset. I mean, I loved it when I went a few weeks ago and I saw Warsaw hand HSE their first loss in girls basketball. But I've seen this Fishers team, Kevin, and that team is good. They didn't even play that great the other night against Westfield, who's another great team.
Balance.
And they still went, one going away. So, yeah.
Be quite the scene tonight all across the state. A reminder, Purdue and Illinois over in Champaign. That's 8 o'clock. Jason Benetti, Bill Rafferty on the call. Purdue a 3.5-point underdog. Is it just me, or do I feel like Purdue and Illinois are going to be two very difficult teams to gauge when the bracket comes out?
Just look at the last 5 weeks.
Maybe I could just be lazy and say that about the entire Big Ten, but I feel like Purdue and Illinois have had these the high highs and the low lows this season.
Don't even get me started. I mean, I know I don't talk too much Illinois men's basketball.
The Illinois grad here, James Boyd.
Yeah, it is confounding, to say the least, when you look at just some of their performances. I mean, they got smoked in the Garden against Duke. Obviously, Duke is amazing. Then they get out here.
That was the biggest loss in school history, wasn't
it? And then a few days ago, they smoked Michigan. And so it'll be interesting. But I do think this is a huge opportunity for Purdue to, again, I mean, they're getting in the tournament, obviously, but to stack their resume and kind of give themselves a better position.
Is what you're playing for,
exactly.
Big Ten-wise, too.
Illinois' season has been like their jerseys in the rafters. They're upside down. They're all
that's a good shot.
Did you see Michael Grady rock that the other night?
Yeah, I did see that.
Terrence Shannon Jr. now plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves, so Michael Grady and his color analysts both rock those shirts.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. And honestly speaking, I mean, when you look at – I feel like I'm traumatized because my senior year of college – Carson Edwards came and dropped 40 on the Illini, and he dunked on the big man, Nana Egwu, and I was thinking, wow, this guy is amazing. So I could totally see Braden Smith coming to Champaign and ruining, I don't know, my night, but other people's nights. I'm a little more neutral these days, but, yeah, I see him in store for a big game.
Here's the question, Kevin. When you go back and you look at that losing streak that Purdue finally got off of, they've won a couple of games now since then. Did things happen there that exposed them? Were they doing things to themselves? Have they rectified that? Have they fixed that? That's really the question moving forward.
Well, I think the general rim protection question is never going to go away. I mean, that's you don't match. Daniel Jacobson doesn't magically have a healthy leg and he's out there for you. But I thought in the second half against UCLA, frankly, just your All-Americans played like that. And I say that plurally. I mean, with what Trey Kaufman, Rand, and Braden Smith can do, and then just a historic shooting night last night. I think at times we tend to kind of overreact of like, there's these big losing streaks and you win a couple in a row and it's like, they've cured everything from the losing streak. And it's like, well, they just did other things exceptionally well.
Yeah.
I mean, that UCLA game was a tie game.
Yeah.
Say it again.
They also beat a team they should have beaten pretty
both of
handily
these
at
home
home
games. So I think it'll be a great challenge tonight. And again, it's a little different. Obviously, Indiana's playing for their spot in the tournament.
Yeah.
Well, okay, what's Purdue playing for? James just mentioned improving their seeding. Purdue is kind of in that range right now where they're right on like that 4, maybe creeping up to the 3 line. Well, when you're a Midwest team as a 4 seed, oftentimes just with how the bracket gets laid out, you might get sent out west for these first couple games. Last year, Purdue was the number 1 seed. They got sent to Cambridge Fieldhouse and then Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. In Detroit. So, like, that was, certainly a much easier path logistically. So I think that is something Purdue could be playing for here tonight and again, of course, next week. If you're able to win tonight, able to win a couple games in the Big Ten tournament, now you might bump up to a more of a centrally located, at least first 2 rounds in the tournament. As we know, Indiana and Ohio State defining the bubbles. And I guess it's senior day down in Bloomington, right? Ballo and the Indiana dudes. Galloway, Leal, Luke Goody.
We sure we don't have one more year for Galloway? Somewhere, somehow, some way?
It seems like Galloway and Leal have been there forever, does it not?
Respect to those guys, though, 'cause I do think that they've, at least in my opinion, the feeling of this season feels so much better over the last couple of weeks than it was early in the year when, obviously the news broke that Mike Woodson's stepping down, but I think these guys have responded really well. And I know it's a cliche. It's like your back's against the wall. How do you respond? But they really have played good basketball. And I think, you take that gut punch from Oregon earlier this week, and it's another opportunity to kind of show, some of that mental fortitude. So I'm excited for that game, especially with Ohio State also just doing some crazy stuff to stay alive in this thing. So we'll see. It's going to be a big game.
All right, coming up in a minute, we will get back to the Colts and what they may have ahead over the next week or so. In the meantime, I think it's time for a morning checkdown.
No Tyrese Halliburton, no ability to stop the perimeter of the Atlanta Hawks. I will say, I don't know if those two things go hand in hand, but nonetheless, Halliburton missed his second game of the season last night, and the Pacers gave up a number in the paint that had Rick Carlisle's attention after the game.
Well, we gave up 74 paint points in the game, and I think that's the most compelling stat from this. A lot of the other stats look pretty even, but the paint points are a big problem. And, down the stretch, we're fouling down the stretch. That contributes to some of the points in the last quarter. But we got to fight harder, from start to finish. I mean, we had some good stretches, but too many lags.
Yeah, I thought the most disappointing aspect, I've said it all morning long, is you caught Trae Young on the bench for a few minutes there in the fourth quarter, and Atlanta not only retook the lead, but they built a lead without him on the floor. Revenge game for George Niang. Break out your Niang jerseys. He had 12 in the fourth quarter, 24, 26 off the bench. That was the difference. So the Pacers lose to the Hawks 124-118. James Boyd, they will see them tomorrow night, also a 7:30 tip.
All right. Big Ten women's basketball tournament continues. Yesterday, Indiana had a noon game. They beat Oregon 78-62. They will play again at noon today. Kevin, what can we expect from the Hoosiers?
Juju Watkins time. James Boyd, you have watched her this season. They lost to Iowa, remember, on the jersey retirement day. That's one of, 2 losses, I think, all season?
Yes.
For Lindsey Gottlieb's team, who she was on with Jake yesterday, but that will be a heavy cream and crimson, but you also have some Juju fans in the building today over at Cambridge Fieldhouse.
I mean, if you want to stop Juju, she has the bun. I would just hide her hair gel or something, and so she's a little thrown off with her pregame routine. But in all seriousness, I think that they obviously have to key in on her. And when USC has looked mortal, it's been because they forced the other players to win the game for them versus letting Juju just go off.
Also in the NFL yesterday, Kevin, the Bengals say they are willing to talk trade for Trey Hendrickson. 17.5 sacks last year, the most sacks for anybody over the last 2 seasons combined. The Colts interested?
Yeah, Colts obviously have some connections with Lou Anarumo, and we mentioned it earlier in the show. Charlie Partridge, their D-line coach, coached Hendrickson in college at Florida Atlantic. We hit on this a lot in the 7:30 segment. We'll definitely come back to it. The Colts did cut, by the way, Raekwon Davis yesterday. That opened up around $6.5–7 million in space there. I do think if you were to go after Trey Hendrickson, it would mean probably the loss of a guy like Braden Smith if you're going to play a little bit of the finances game and how all that will juggle. So we'll continue to chat about that. Again, I expressed to Greg Rakestraw my sadness on the mid-major realm. We had a lot of Indiana teams lose yesterday in their men's conference tournaments. That would include Indiana State. That was a layup. Southern Illinois scored with 4 seconds to go to beat Indiana State. Fort Wayne lost 70-67 in the Horizon League tournament. Evansville smoked by Murray State. So Valpo, that's it. Monroe pointed out, don't forget about Southern Indiana. Are they eligible for the tournament? I know they didn't even make the Ohio Valley tournament. And then Ball State needs like 3 things to go their way just to get into the MAC tournament there. So mid-major wise in the state, not going to be really any men's flavor unless Valpo gets on a huge, huge run.
I'm feeling an all-Indiana parlay.
Mark? Mark?
Check me into the gambling penitentiary if I do
Call
that.
the number.
with Purdue and Valpo, it's the all-gold.
No.
They're both. They
I'm
both
telling
are
you,
underdogs, Mark.
The
I
Beacons.
understand, Mark.
Think of
I
the
understand.
Beacons.
Okay, how much money are you guys putting in on this?
Look, brother.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
I am the devil on your shoulder. I am not the person who's actually giving you good advice, just fun advice.
If you want to hit the Venmo, James, by all means, you can talk on my shoulder all you want.
Mark's gotten a little soft here.
He's still hurting
wait a
over
minute,
his
Kevin.
bad
What are you
beat this
talking
past
about?
week.
Well, if we get some time in the show, I do have a Venmo story for you that involves Bob Kravitz.
How about this? I'll
Okay.
try to look up what a
share
parlay
that
would do,
later.
and we can go from there.
Mark, didn't I Venmo you like $3?
Yeah, to watch Rudy.
What was that? That's
Just
what
to
it
rent
was.
it.
I was trying to think what that was for.
It's for Rudy, which I did watch before the Notre Dame National Championship game. And you were feeling pretty good vibes until the second half happened.
He's probably still scarred by.
I
3rd and
know.
11, baby. 3rd
I
and
know.
11.
Did you see that passive aggressiveness is coming back at you for
Hey.
taking him on the betting line over there?
I'm going to look up the parlay. We'll come back to it, and we'll see what we're dealing with here.
Oh,
But
yeah. Now we're cooking with gas, baby.
All right, more on the Colts coming up in a moment. It's the Fan Morning Show with James Boyd, Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Jeff Rickard, right here, all of them for you at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
What would a Trey Hendrickson trade look like? We'll get to that here. Upcoming. Good Friday morning to you. Thanks for closing out the week with us, as usual, in the month of March. Busy Hoops night, Busy Hoops weekend. We'll hit on all of that. I might be showing a little bit of my old soul here, but I'm curious if you guys agree with me on this. I love many things about the Indianapolis 500. Many things. The nostalgia, the just patriotic nature of the weekend, the pre-race, et cetera, et cetera. A radio broadcast, if I could be selfish for a second. You know what else I love? I love that I still get a hard ticket to that sporting event.
I didn't know where you were
You
going
keep
with
them all?
that.
Keep all of them. Absolutely love that Doug Bowles and IMS has continued that. Yesterday, you saw the reveal of the 2025 ticket. Kind of a, I don't know if mirage is the right word, but obviously Joseph Newgarden back-to-back. So you had last year's celebration kind of fading in the background with
It's cool.
this past year. I thought was really, really cool. They made that announcement yesterday over at the airport. So I don't know. There's just part of me that my kids will probably look at me one day and be like, Dad, who the hell cares? But I love collecting the Indianapolis 500 tickets.
If you started any venture, especially in that realm, don't you just want Doug Bowles to run it for you? Whatever it is? I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, that man fully knows what he's doing there. And the Doug Bowles is my president T-shirts, I believe, from the shop. I feel like those are selling quite well. Speaking of Doug Bowles, Nathan Brown from the Star had this yesterday. It sounds like ticket sales continue to be on track. That would be a sold-out grandstand. I think they said 10,000 head of pace. You know, last year, obviously, we ran into that ugly weather on race day. So all signs pointing towards a big crowd over there, and we could be looking at, from a grandstand standpoint, a sellout.
You know what they say, Kevin? The more 500s you go to, like the older you get, the softer the ticket gets.
Oh, Lord.
Wow.
Lord have mercy. Can I boo that?
Thank you.
On the air?
Thank you.
Can I throw a tomato at him?
You can.
But I am glad that I've learned some new Indiana traditions because I would not have known to keep my ticket.
Well,
I got to get to my first one. How about we do that this summer?
Yeah, I think a lot of people enjoy, you got the lanyard and you've got the little, ticket, sleeve, if you will, as you put it in. And I just think, the ticket's a cool ticket. Like it's well done. I mean, it's kind of an awesome look at Newgarden and, the past tickets I know a lot of people collect. So in a day and age where.
Is there a favorite you have?
I feel like Elio. I'm a sucker for the historic nature to what Elio has done, and so I feel like the Elio fourth one, and that would probably be where I would go. But I also feel this, and again, I'm showing my old age here and being way too. Why would anyone think about this? Do you guys ever get a little fear when you're going into a sporting event right now? What happens if all these scanners just
break?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do they know who's in and who's not?
Yeah, I've thought about this even with restaurants. I'm I got to scan a QR code. Even at Chili's, you got the thing where you pay on your own.
Yeah, but at least at the restaurants, there's got to be a hard copy of the menu somewhere.
Well, you can still give them cash
at these sporting events.
You're so out of luck, baby.
What are we all just stampeding over each other in the Gamebridge lobby because the scanners aren't working?
Well, they don't always work the first time either. A lot of times those lines back up because it takes 3, 4, 5 times to get the scan right.
I'm glad you mentioned this because you know what I could have used? I could have used some hard tickets when I went to my first hockey game with Bob because I love Bob Kravitz. As anybody knows Bob Kravitz, he does not know how to work technology that great. He will own that. So he had a ticket in his virtual wallet. KB, we get up to the gate.
I can see this story from a mile away.
What is it? The Bridgestone Arena? Is it that the one in
right
Tennessee?
Uh-huh.
Nashville?
So, first hockey game I'm going to, and he goes, I can't find the tickets. And I'm like, we just stood in this line. We got to get moving. What is going on? And he just hands me his phone, with 2 hands, like a little kid. And he's like, help me. And I'm just like, all right.
Were you able to?
I was able to find his wallet in his phone, get the tickets, and we got in there pretty good. And then.
Did you carry him to the seat too? Did you hold his hand? Did you do anything else?
To put some cotton candy.
No, to put a button on this very fun, hilarious night of my first hockey game. We get to the end of the night. We're trying to, get back to our hotel because we got Titans game the next day. And this is when the Venmo comes in, Mark. I'm like, hey, all we got to do is walk a few blocks, get out of you know how it is when it's downtown and it's packed. You want to get away from the crowd. Mm-hmm. I was like, we walk 4 blocks. This Uber is going to drop $50. We'll be fine. And we'll be out of the traffic. We won't have to sit in traffic in the Uber. We walk about 3 blocks, and Bob sees this random man rolls down his window, and he goes, "Hey, you guys need a ride?" And he's like, you need a ride to, Lyft, Uber, whatever. And he goes, "Sure, yeah." And he goes up and gets in the guy's car. And so at this point, I'm like, should I even get in with him? Are we going to get kidnapped? Like, should I let my colleague get kidnapped on his own?
Follow Bob, and you'll talk about this night for the rest of your life.
Dude,
I've got Bob Kravitz and James Boyd in the back of my car.
We get in the car, and I'm like, hey, so how does this work? Do I, pay? Can I just get the Lyft app? Because, Lyft and Uber, the car has to come to you. You can't just pick the car once you're in it. He's like, no. You Venmo for $100. I'm like, $100? I'm like, I'm not about to do any of that. And so I have every money, app on my phone. KB, I did not use that. The guy was like, hey, you got to pay or whatever. And I was like, Bob, I got to figure this out. And Bob goes, oh, just expense it and see what the Athletic gives you. And I'm like, they're not going to give me anything for this unauthorized kidnapping. And so he ended up, paying the $100 to the guy, and the rest is history. We made it home safely to our hotel. The guy did not kidnap us, but I was thinking, this is not it.
Why are there no handles on these doors?
I think
Bob could write a book on his nights in Nashville, if I'm going to be totally honest.
Man,
but in all seriousness, what's he going to do with Bob Kravitz and James Boyd?
You say that, but I'm not joking. I was checking to make sure these doors opened, of my free will.
You don't want to read that book.
No, that was a hilarious night and funny moment, but yeah.
I'm sure watching hockey with Bob is a treat too, because he's a hockey guy.
Oh, it was great. I'm going to enjoy myself at Indy Fuel tonight. I look at it like this, and I wish I was like this more when I was younger, seriously. Just because I did not grow up watching something doesn't mean it isn't good or cool. So I try to approach it with if people love this, there must be something to love about it, rather than, oh, this must stink because I don't like it. Nah, it's probably pretty cool if people are packing it out to watch it. So that's my perspective.
So you didn't have any Blackhawks experiences growing up in Chicago?
Not really. Even though they were at the peak of their powers, it was not a lot of, me enjoying hockey because my dad just wasn't into it. Whereas now I feel like I'm more of if people are talking about this, I don't want to be left out, which is why I'll be watching all of, I get it by default now because Purdue and Illinois play each other, but I have chosen a lot of times this year to watch the Indiana teams over my own alma mater, and people think I'm crazy, but it's I can't be in the market and not know what's going on in the market. It doesn't work that way.
You become fans after a while, too, which is kind of fun.
Well, and I think, Mark, you and I talked about this during the USA-Canada Four Nations. Sean McDonough's comment, late in that game of, the anxiety of the bouncing puck is just something unlike any other sport. And, soccer is low scoring, hockey is low scoring, but the soccer field is so long, you don't get that anxiety as much as you get it in hockey.
Yeah, loose puck in front of the net.
Oh, yeah. And again, it can be
a shift change can change the entire game.
And in a 3-second span, you can be in front of one goal and in front of the other. So, I'd agree. From a viewing standpoint, excellent.
All right, lots to talk about. We will get to the Colts and what they may want to do or not do with some of the folks that are on the market, either through trade or through free agency. And they got to figure out what they're going to do with their offensive line as all of that Rubik's Cube continues to unfold over there at West 56th. We'll talk about the possibilities next. It's the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. Mark, you got James and I bobbing heads over here, man.
It's my goal.
Digging it.
Get you into some new music.
And they can go find your playlist every day, right?
Yep. Mark D 1075.
I like it. We've been talking about the Colts quite a bit this morning. Trey Hendrickson looks like he may be available via trade. He played for Lou Anarumo last year. The Cincinnati Bengals looking to do something with him. I don't know what it would cost, maybe a second or third round pick, maybe a little bit more than that over 2 years, but you got to pay him too. So how does that play into all the things the Colts want to do? And more specifically, James Boyd, they got to figure out what they want to do with the offensive line, or if they did something like that, does that play into how they rebuild the offensive line?
I want to start with Kevin Bowen is not good for my anxiety because he has me stressed now. Usually when I see Kevin, it is comforting. It is like, okay, the show is going to be great. You know, the hair is looking great. You know,
James, sadly, the track record with my co-host,
you know, I'm hoping to, survive here, but you are making it hard, brother. I think you raised a really good question, though, about the offensive line. Seriously, because I haven't really imagined a world where they aren't able to retain Will Fries. And part of that is because I talked to Will Fries at the end of the season. He seems like he loves it here in Indianapolis, like most players do when they are like the underdog 7th-round pick who becomes the starter. You feel a certain level of loyalty and gratitude towards that franchise. But then, as Mark kind of points out, teams offer money, and money can kind of dictate loyalty to a certain degree. And I just wonder if the Colts get outbid for him, which I don't think should be the case, seriously. I think that he should definitely be number one priority to bring back, in addition to adding another free agent. But, I mean, where do they go if he isn't there? That instantly becomes a really big need for them at right guard, on top of you possibly rolling the dice at right tackle with Matt Gonzalez and at center with Tanner Bortolini. And as we know, you all, whenever you are banking on 3 or 4 things going right in the NFL, they don't. You have to have contingency plans. I just don't feel great about the contingency plans without Will Fries in the mix on top of other potential changes.
Well, and this is all Trey Hendrickson on the back burner for now. Like, this is just talking about the here and now of, okay, let's say Hendrickson doesn't get traded here. I said to you earlier in the show, James, 1.5. That would be the number I would throw to you over underwise of those 3 offensive linemen returning. The 3 would be the 3 starters at center, right guard, and right tackle. Ryan Kelly, free agent. Right guard, Will Fries, arguably the top guard in the open market. And right tackle, Braden Smith. We know that situation sounds like he wants to keep on playing, but that's a $19 million cap hit. And we're just not used to that in the O-line. And I think both of these statements are true. The Colts passing game was bad last season. The offensive line was not a major issue. So now if the offensive line becomes an issue or more of an issue, what does that make a bad passing offense? And that is Chris Ballard's, I mean, he loves the O-line. He loves it more than you love Dino Nuggets. I mean, he is obsessed with the offensive line and trenches. So that is going to be, for me, one to watch next week, how all of that is going to play out. And if you were to throw the Hendrickson thing on top of it, to me, that means Braden Smith is gone. Yeah. And then, that would have other domino effects off of it. So, Anthony Richardson's 3rd season and, where they're at from an offensive line standpoint, you drafted guys last year in round 3 and round 4. Is it just time to say, hey, you started a few games for us last year. We feel like it went fairly well. We're giving the starting keys to you right now, and boom. And again, the throwaway line at the combine was there from Chris Ballard. We felt like Tanner Bortolini played well at guard. It was a line that I don't think anybody paid a lot of attention to, and I've thought more about the offensive line. That comment has brought, kind of come back up for me of like, wait a minute, is there something there? Is Ryan Kelly coming back? And Tanner Bortolini plays right guard if Will Fries exits? It's just something that I haven't eliminated yet.
Let's talk about Ryan Kelly for a minute. Where are the Colts at with him right now?
I just assumed that Bortolini would take over. And I assumed that on April 20, whatever it was last year when Bortolini was drafted in round 4. You don't draft centers in round 4 and not think that they're going to start for you. And again, Kelly's what, 31?
Mm-hmm.
How many games did he miss this season?
I knew it was on IR, so it was at least 4.
Right. I mean, I think it was north of that, So you look at the contract and all of that. It's at some point, I've said this phrase quite often, but at some point you do have to pass the torch at spots.
Yeah.
And, again, interior O-line for me has always been one that if I'm going to build it, that is not going to be a heavily resourced offensive line. And I'm probably putting too much into, Manning era, but, what was that? Undrafted, and a fifth-round pick at guard, center, and guard. At some point, you have to do that at some places and pay the others. Mark brought it up earlier in the show. If they re-sign Will Fries, they will have an absolutely absurd amount of money in 2 guards. 2 guards. Teams just don't do that.
Well, right now, according to SpotTrack, top 51 cap space, $41 million and change. We already talked about the fact that if you went and did a deal for Trey Hendrickson, just say for kicks and giggles, right? A second and a third, maybe? Something like that. Plus, you got to pay him about $30 million a year. You're going to have to free up a bunch of cap space somewhere else if you're going to do that and bring Fries back and maybe add 1 or 2 other guys, Kevin. It starts to become, as I've been saying all morning long, this Rubik's Cube that you're going to have to try and figure out what to do, how to do, and it certainly would affect how you draft, too.
Absolutely, it would affect how you draft because you make an investment like that and you give up draft capital on top of that for Trey Hendrickson. It's tough. It's tough. And I look at it like this. I just want to know what's the first domino to fall because that will kind of at least give us a hint as to what comes next. For example, if they move on from Braden Smith and say, hey, we're going to release you and create a lot of money in cap space, I believe $17 million, that to me is the first domino. Then it's, okay, what quarterback do you go get? Because we've talked about the offensive line a ton today, which I understand, but, who's going to be the guy under center they have to protect? Is it going to be Anthony or is it going to be somebody else? And so there's just so many moving parts. But in my heart of hearts, I feel like Trey Hendrickson is probably he's a great player. It doesn't fit to me the timeline or the status of this team right now. And I get it. I mean, we heard Rake earlier, and it's just do something. But I don't know if do something, in my mind, means go out and get a defensive star when you have so many issues you want to address offensively, starting with your quarterback and then the guys who are blocking up front for him.
KB, here's the other part of it. DeForest Buckner right now, $26.6 million against the cap. If you brought it, depending on how let's just say it was straight up $30 million, if you trade for him, you're looking at 20% of your cap space with DeForest Buckner and Trey Hendrickson if you do that.
Yeah, I mean, those are 2 really good players, though, and
right.
I still think the
just on your defensive line
is premium position. I think a counter to the Hendrickson move was, again, is this enough of a direct impact to Anthony Richardson in your offense? Now, I sit here on Friday, March 7th, and when we do a show on Monday, when that show ends, we will be 2 hours away from things starting in the NFL. So we literally have an hour left of this show, 1 full show on Monday, and then we're finally going to start to see if actions happen. And I guess as I sit here right now, because we've talked a lot about math in the last couple hours, the math is difficult. It's not as obvious and crystal clear. The Colts are not sitting there with $100 million opening caps. They have a good amount and they can open up more, but we know their math is oftentimes a little different than other people's math. So as I sit here right now, 72 hours away from potentially things beginning in the NFL, when Chris Ballard looks in the mirror and thinks about how they're going to act next week, I think he has got to remind himself, you're in the longest playoff drought this franchise has been in 30 years. You haven't won a division title in 10 years. And if he needs to add further reasoning why he needs to change, just read off the quarterbacks that have won a division title. This is not Patrick Mahomes in the AFC West of AFC South quarterbacks that have won the title here over the last 10 years. And then lastly, again, guys, 3 NFL teams. That's it. Only 3 NFL teams have a longer playoff drought than you right now. That, to me, is one of the most jarring stats out there. Of the entire league, there's only 3 teams that have sat on their ass in January longer than you have. That, if you aren't going to change now, when are you ever going to change? Now, again, how it unfolds, how it looks, Hendrickson this, Braden Smith that, Daniel Jones this, do we see whatever? Is there a move we haven't really talked about that enters the fray? That remains to be seen. But that remindment if that's even a word, reminding yourself of those three things you can't lose sight of before things starts to unfold on Monday.
And things have changed so much. I remember back in Andersonville, tell you how long ago it was, talking to Jim Irsay, and it was on the eve of the second to last year, I think.
It's
of
your
Andrew
birthday. You
Luck's
have to say, back
career.
in my day.
Yeah,
That's what
back
you
in
have to
my
say.
day. But at that point, Jim Irsay made it like he underlined it. He was expecting multiple Super Bowl wins in the next decade. We've come a long way since then, Kev. A long way.
I mean, Kevin remembers the end of the year speech that he gave in the locker room, which I think was more towards the players than it was the fan base. But just saying, I'm proud of you guys for finishing 9-8 and beating the Jaguars, and it's like, or 8-9, rather. It's like, is that really what they've become? And I mean, to be honest, right before the combine started, I think that was when they had like the Night of Champions, and that it was cool from what I understand. I know Mike Chappell went. He was telling me he enjoyed seeing Peyton Manning catching up with him and others, but that's kind of what the Colts have become, unfortunately, where they're a team where you celebrate what happened years and years ago versus what happened now. I mean, Kevin asked Chris Ballard on the air during the combine, what's your greatest accomplishment? And the two he named were when Andrew Luck, came back from the shoulder injury, had a great season 2018, and then the 2020 season with Uncle Phil. And that's 5 and 7 years ago, man. Like it feels like we're in a new era of Colts football, but obviously they want to be in a better era. And I think to do that, you have to make some really hard choices this offseason, and ones that we will grade you harshly on if they don't go right.
Speaking of Uncle Phil, I really want Notre Dame to go after Gunnar Rivers, Phillips' oldest son.
I was going to say, where is he in the pecking order?
2027 recruiting class here. I'm all in on Gunnar Rivers. I mean, how great of a name is that?
I was going to say, he sounds like a
doesn't
folk
he
hero.
just sounds like just a slinger? I mean, doesn't he just sound like a dude that's going to be 32 of 38 for a national title one year?
Notre Dame is just going to be like the daycare center for former NFL players and their kids.
Indeed.
If it works.
Yeah.
Jerome Bettis, Brian Urlacher, Plaxico Burress.
Ryan Clark's son, I
Ryan
think,
Clark's
was there.
son.
Yep.
Indeed. Thank you, Mark, for that reminder.
All right, we'll continue to talk about the Colts and what they may have ahead over the next week or so. We will also talk about a very busy and fascinating weekend of basketball ahead. It's the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Sounds like 2:59. Mark Dykton dialing it up here in the final hour of the week. This is the Fan Morning Show. Busy night of hoops per usual. Again, we got the Colts and free agency beginning around the NFL coming up Monday at noon when the legal tampering begins. So the phrase agreed to terms, you'll see a whole lot. And I'm afraid that our chat here with JMV is going to be one of, he might not be in the best mood. John, is that right? Your Sycamores lose on a layup with 4 seconds to go yesterday, and Miles Turner doesn't shoot the ball in the second half of the Pacers' loss last night?
Yeah, I expected Indiana State, Kev, honestly, to lose. That's the type of season they had. The fact that they won some games, given that everybody, including their coach, was in the transfer portal last year after that NIT run to the championship game, was non-surprising, and yesterday didn't surprise me at all. And really last night didn't surprise me, Kev, either. Here's why. Tyrese Halliburton is such a key to everything, and there is no larger key production-wise that Tyrese presents than that of 33 and Miles Turner. And you could tell last night. I'll give you something simple, fellas. All you have to do is see the high ball screen action that absolutely was non-existent, did not work. And I love Andrew Nembhard, but it's not the same because in the high ball screen action, they don't leave Miles to go to Nembhard like they do with Halliburton. Plus, Halliburton is more straight-line driver, which forces a quicker decision. Those guys can hang out in what normally is no man's land defensively in that high ball screen action. And Miles was doing a lot of posting up last night, which could tell you that normally getting those open looks from three wasn't working, and that's all because there was no Halliburton. So a lot of which what you brought up I was fully expecting.
You hear that basketball knowledge from John at 9 in the morning, high ball screens, showing and recovering. I thought you were going to talk about drop coverage for a second there, John.
Well, I mean, you can just tell, and I know this. I'm a supporter of Miles, but I know what's in his wheelhouse, and I know what isn't. And I know what best benefits him, and that's Tyrese Halliburton. We didn't see Miles' game evolve until Halliburton got here. Halliburton is an elite-level passer, and he's a willing passer. And really what he does is orchestrates everybody getting open. But there is nobody more essential to Miles Turner and his existence at a higher level in the NBA than Tyrese. And as much as we love Nembhard, you watch how many times these guys drive off a ball screen action and Miles pops or Miles, dives to the rim. And you could kind of tell by his body language, he knows that he's not going to get the ball, much less they're going to look at him. So it is just different, and you knew that was coming. The problem is you can't let George Niang go for 12 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, hell, you guys could all check him up. Seriously.
No, I could not.
The joke of the night.
So I do want to pivot to the defense side of the ball, which you kind of noted there, and I do want
to picture myself guarding Niang a little bit
I
here.
mean,
I see KB getting up and down the floor now.
Can you get a stinking hand? Kev, you'd get a hand up. They teach you that at Cathedral and golf class. Get a hand up. I don't know why they would do that, but did they do it? Just get a hand up or something. Be in the general vicinity. Jesus, 12 points from Niang. No wonder you get sunk.
I said it all morning long. When Trae Young went to the bench there, like 8 minutes to go, you're up 2, and he comes back in, and you're down 5. Like, that can't – like, Niang hitting 2 threes in that stretch, that can't happen, when you have a Hawks team that obviously is Trae Young and then kind of a bunch of randoms, really, after him.
Yeah, a bunch of guys you can't pronounce their names. I don't know how Chris probably has to practice 48 hours in preparing for them because you don't know who they are. You don't know how to pronounce their names. But I kind of expected a split. I just thought that there were guys in the neighborhood last night where you could really have the opportunity to take care of it, and they never did. Whether it was Dyson Daniels coming up with big shots, we mentioned Niang. If fouling, they kind of went to the foul game. I thought a little bit earlier with about 50-some seconds remaining. I know it was a 2-possession game, but I kind of wanted them to play it out defensively and see instead of, fouling. They went with whatever his name was from USC, the big guy, went to the free throw line there trying to get him to miss, and he didn't. So I don't know. I just expected it last night because the loss of Halliburton is so significant for this team, especially the way that he's playing right now. But it is as significant to anybody as it is to Miles. And you saw that where he didn't get basically a single touch other than, those situations at the top of the key in the second half when he
when he would dribble and then dribble handoff and stuff like that. So you can see that coming.
John, I can hear the angst in your voice. What were the final 5 minutes and 55 seconds like for you in a stress level setting in that game last night?
I throw fits, Jeff. I'm a fit thrower. That's why I watch all these things.
Can we get some
by
video
myself.
of that?
I get pissed. Seriously, I do. I do. There are a lot of things that I shouldn't notice. And listen, I look in the mirror and I go, you would have done so much worse. I mean, much lower level of basketball, I would probably half-ass a lot of stuff too. But I'm going, there's things that you can do right here that's the difference between winning and losing. I can't imagine if you're really good at coaching guys or you're really – I mean, that's what you do. You study. Like you guys talk to Rick every Tuesday morning. I can't imagine the level of angst of watching basketball. I mean, it probably goes from being a fun-loving event to something that is torturous, right? Especially if it's not played the way that you expect. So think about us in terms of that. I couldn't imagine being at that level and dealing with it.
John, I did not expect to hear the word torturous at 9:07 a.m., but I will say this. Sometimes you will torture me, brother, and stress me a little bit because I will get – a text at like 2:55 p.m. Hey, can you come on? And so in that vein, I'm hoping you're prepping a little bit more today. What you got coming up on the show for this afternoon?
I don't know. You may get that at 2:55. You mentioned Mark Dykton was clutch in playing man in the box by Allison Chains to start. And I think it was Kev that referenced, hey, it feels like it's 2:59. I know Jeff's in the room, and he's probably going to love this, but me and Jake in the crosstalk before the start of my show, it may be 3:03. So you never know. we end up talking for such a long time. No, we got a lot. I mean, you got Purdue, Illinois. How about Purdue in these Friday night games? You guys think I don't like the Friday night games on Fox. I know that you go on the Fox channel, and that's great. But Purdue, these are back-to-back 8 o'clock starts on Friday night. You played on Tuesday, and you may get an extra day off before the Big Ten tournament, but I'm not a big fan of that. You get Ohio State, IU, must-win situation, really, for IU. I would guess you guys have been talking about that coming up tomorrow. And, the Pacers round 2 in Atlanta, free agency coming up. The Trey Hendrickson stuff, guys. Kev, that's hilarious. There's no way in the world Chris Ballard. Do you know how changed you would have to be? Seriously, how changed would you have to be Chris Ballard to do something like that right now?
Do you look at it all? If Daniil Hunter was close last year, the trade up in the top 10 was a rumor.
Guess what they want to say? Yeah, everything's close. Yeah, we looked at that. I mean, they did that with Hunter. They did that with Bowers. I'm assuming that was that whole Giants thing. It's always the end result of telling us, well, we tried, but it never works out that way.
Does it change?
I would say this. If I were them, I would go for it because who the hell cares about draft capital next year or the year after that? Because in all likelihood, none of these guys are going to be there if the quarterback doesn't play well, right? And this whole competition thing is kind of jokish too because it all matters with Richardson. I mean, if you were going to work at this, if you wanted Sam Darnold, for example, guys, wouldn't you just get rid of everybody and just start new and bring in Sam Darnold? Why wouldn't you do that? Why be bringing Sam Darnold, high dollar value now? He's not going to beat out Richardson because you're not going to allow that to happen because this would be a wasted season if Richardson doesn't start it. If he gets injured, okay, you're going to need an ample backup. But otherwise, why would you need that? Why are we wasting this year if that is your focus? If it's not on Richardson and trying to find and see him evolve into what you expected when you picked him 4th overall. This, to me, this whole competition talk is reading the room of the fans because that's what they want to hear, and I think that calms and quiets them down when they hear it. I don't think it's anything more than that.
The legend, Coach Lovell, on a sectional Friday night. The GOAT, Don Fisher, looking ahead to a monumental one tomorrow in Assembly Hall. And the ears bleeding of Mike Wells. That's what your Friday will look like here.
Wow.
Coming up.
Mike taking strays.
Wait
JMV.
a minute. Is my producer up this early? Did he just send you that text, Kev? How'd you know all this?
I think you and I both know James Adams, wakes up about the time Jake gets started around noon.
Yeah, his alarm clock is set to Lamb of God, so he'll wake up about 1:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, once the hourglass of Days of Our Lives occurs, that's when James Adams rolls over. John, we'll be listening, brother.
You guys, thank you.
JMV right there, 3 o'clock today. Coach Lovell on a sectional Friday. Don Fisher. It's pretty good.
It's like a
way
show.
to end a week. A little ingest there with my guy Mike Wells.
Yeah, giving him the stray out of nowhere right there.
Nah,
he deserves it.
Yeah, I would say Wells gets on all of
He
us
deserves
pretty
it.
good. So
He deserves
I appreciate the jab, KB.
Were you guys surprised Jarris Walker started last night?
A little bit. Because it's funny, you had been talking about him earlier this week, and he's been playing better. Do you think it was just Rick saying, because to your point, he likes to keep that second unit intact?
I know, do you put it more of he wants to keep the second unit intact, or Jarris Walker's earn the right to start?
I think a little of both. I think he likes to keep that second unit intact, but I think he wanted to see what Jarris Walker would give him.
Yeah, after having him play in that G League game, I think it's an opportunity to kind of instill more confidence in him and say, hey, we're kind of short on our horses tonight. We're going to, ride you and see what happens. And I thought he played okay. It wasn't like he had a memorable performance, but I don't think that he was like this huge liability or like, oh my gosh, he's unplayable. It just felt a little, clunky at times, in my opinion.
8 points on 4-9 shooting, KB.
The more I watch Walker, the more I'm like, man, he's a lot more gifted offensively than I ever gave him credit for, and I still don't see it defensively.
But he did scramble for 7 rebounds last night.
Yeah, but just that, when he was drafted, I thought, man, this, here's your answer to the 6'8" wings that seemingly torch the Pacers night in, night out. And maybe I put too high of a bar there, honestly. That could be my fault. But, last night, for example, he had a really like a left-handed hook shot. He had another left-handed assist, a beautiful in-stride pass. I'm like, man, offensively, that dude belongs. He can handle it. That to me, I don't see an issue there. He can play in the rotation. It's more of just, again, it comes back to that defensive side of the ball. If you would have told me last night that no Halliburton, no Mathurin, Walker's going to start, I would think, oh boy, that's one of the Pacers' better defensive lineups. I mean, a Nembhard, Nesmith, Walker, Siakam, Turner. Some might say that's the best Pacers defensive line. Shepard would probably be in that mix, but that's one of the better Pacer defensive lineups, and yet you give up 74 points in the paint?
Yeah, inexcusable, I thought. And I thought they wasted a pretty great performance offensively from Pascal Siakam. So I look at Saturday night. It's not like, the end-all, be-all if they drop this game, but, look at this road trip, and we talked about positioning and records and things like that. You want to get to the Milwaukee part of the schedule with a chance to, gain some ground on them. And I think if you obviously drop some of these games, you're doing a disservice to what you've worked for all year to this point.
Yeah, and a Trey Young, he
had a big game. I will say that. But
yeah, he had a big assist game,
yeah.
and certainly was distributing really well there. One thing to note, and I'll probably mention this a lot next week, but I tried to bring it up yesterday. You do get the short end of the scheduling stick with Milwaukee next week. You get them second night of a back-to-back, both occasions. Tuesday night here, Saturday night there. Right now, you're 1 game back. Milwaukee's won the first 2 games in of the season series so far. So how Rick Carlisle handles lineups, handles potentially Halliburton in the back-to-backs, and just in general, his entire roster, I think will be very interesting to watch. Rick's not going to reveal that to us on Tuesday when he joins us, but actions will speak louder probably than those words of exactly how they decide to play the, Chicago, Philly, I want to say, are the 2 front ends of the back-to-back. So big week coming up next week for the Pacers.
And opportunities, and kind of an opportunity lost. The Hawks are a team that they have dominated over the last couple of seasons. I think it's the first time, maybe in 2 seasons, that the Hawks have had a chance to beat the Pacers. It's, again, lost opportunity. They're now a full game behind Milwaukee, as you mentioned. They got the tough schedule break, and maybe they fight through it. Maybe they don't. I was a little surprised. Were you surprised at all when Halliburton showed up on the injury list, even before the game yesterday, James?
A little bit, and that is, I know someone asked Rick Carlisle, is the left hip related to the groin, which obviously we kind of know the groin has been an issue of Halliburton's the last couple of years, and he said he didn't know. So, I think there's a real possibility that we could be kind of monitoring his status going into tomorrow. I mean, it doesn't sound like, I don't know what the latest update is, but we'll see if he's a go for Saturday. And if he isn't, then I think my eyes kind of get, a little raised a little bit, or my eyebrows go up a little bit, just because you want him to be fresh towards the end of the season. And to this point, to his credit, he's been available pretty much every
and
night.
Terrific. Too.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want, now to be the time that things start popping back up.
Is it just me, or am I smelling the smoke again?
No, I
Something's
smell a little
burning.
bit too.
Yeah.
What's going on over there on the board?
Nothing at the moment, but I think someone's got like a
Tony
Tostito or
Cass's
something in the
English
microwave.
muffin has been in the
Yeah.
toaster too long.
Well, the one time we got like the paint smell or something, I was getting high as a kite in here. I feel like whatever was burning plastic. Or
That was just you.
Man.
that was just me. Burning sage. Yeah.
I mean, I
It was
covered-
April. It was April 20th. Mark was that
me
the
and
date?
Travis Scott.
Was
Yeah,
it-
just
was
lighting
it-
it up.
Oh,
I'm
my
gonna open up the
goodness.
door, boys.
Thank you. But no, on this note of burning, I was covered a game in Toronto for the Pacers, and an overhead speaker caught on fire during the game. Mass exodus of the fans.
I remember this.
Yeah.
They paused the game, made everyone evacuate, and I was like, does everyone include media? I didn't see any other media leaving, so I was like, all right, whatever. And shout out to Chrissy Myers, Pacers PR, because I didn't have a chance to eat any dinner that day or anything at halftime because nobody was working anymore. She went back to the locker room and got me like all of the snacks that the players eat. I had like a freaking, one of those like muscle milks. I had a bag of chips. I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was the best dinner, and you could hear everything. I imagine that's what games were like in the bubble, Jeff, because it was guys shooting the ball and they were like, "That's a brick. He ain't gonna make that." And I'm like, dang, like it was very eerie and weird. And fun fact, future Pacer Pascal Siakam was in that game.
Well, James, this smell right now might have been the old air fryer for you a couple nights ago. With
No,
that
has
house.
to be from the
I am an air fryer, chef. Okay, things don't get burned. People kind of criticizing my crispy Dino Nuggets, but look, man, they're Dino Nuggets. The dinos have hard shells. Okay, I'm just
So you're an
it is.
advocate. If I go
I
get
need
an
you to
air
come
fryer.
over tonight and read Max Bowen a bedtime book. He would be electric with your dinosaur knowledge.
I tell you what, I am a big fan of Max Bowen. That is the best part of my week during the season. Every Friday when I see Max out there with the chompers and he's getting down to business and you're telling him to focus and he's like, I don't know if I'm going to focus right now. And then your wife fast forward to the video. I'm like, this is cinema. All right. I enjoy that. So me and Max, we're locked in.
9-8 record for Max this season.
So better than the Colts.
He had a nice hot streak, didn't he? 11-5
He was a
last
game
year,
up on the
9-8
Colts.
right
There you
now.
go.
Yeah. We'll see if we continue that coming up next year. All right, we've got a morning check down to hit here.
All right, last night, we've been talking about it. The Hawks come up a 124-118 win over the Indiana Pacers. Former Pacer George Niang. He's the guy that got it done in the fourth quarter along with everybody's favorite guard from the Atlanta Hawks, Trey Young, and it was just too much for the Pacers to handle. They were outscored 23-16 in the last 5:55 of the game, Kevin. Did not see that one coming.
No, again, Trey Young exited in about 3-minute stretch there. Niang had a couple big threes. To John's point, I did think they fouled a little bit early, the Pacers, in trying to extend that game. So we'll see about Halliburton's availability for Saturday nights, that left hip flexor, and we'll see about Benedict Mather. That's now 4 straight missed games for him.
It was a terrific game for Pascal Siakam, though.
Yeah, it was. And then that's encouraging. I think that when you see him and Halliburton the other night, they actually were playing really well together. That's an encouraging sign, but obviously you want to see a little bit more engagement defensively.
He had 34-9 on the night. Meanwhile, the Indiana women rolled over Oregon yesterday, their first game at noon over there at the field house, and it's everything Indiana wanted. They had to beat Oregon, both of them probably okay, but kind of on the bubble. It was a big win for them.
Are the black jerseys here to stay right now?
If they work,
All I'm
keep rolling
saying
them out.
is Sydney
I'd take
Parrish had hers on, and she looked like she was ready to kill some ducks, and she got it done.
10.6 rebounds against her old
Yes, sir.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah, they shot the 3-ball pretty well early on. I know they battled a little bit of foul trouble there. We had Kelly Graves, the Oregon coach, on yesterday. He was nervous about the difference in styles, and I think that played out there. So noon today, Juju Watkins, Lindsey Gottlieb, and the Trojans. That is who Indiana will have here as we get into the quarterfinals of the women's Big Ten tournaments.
Big Ten men finished their regular season this weekend. Purdue on the road against your Illinois Illini tonight.
I know, and I don't know what to make of the Illinois team that I see, and that's kind of what Purdue's been. They've been up and down. They're rolling as of late. So we'll see if Braden Smith becomes the second guard in my most recent memory to come to Illinois and just crush my team because, like I said, my senior year, Carson Edwards came, and I thought he was like Jesus, the way he was playing.
And Kevin, who'd have thought this 6 weeks ago? Indiana playing Ohio State. It feels like a must-win for both teams, or is that overstating it?
Boy, I'm going to be honest. If I have to go number 2 today, I think I might dial up some Carson Edwards highlights. James Boyd's got me on the Carson Edwards kick today.
I didn't see that one coming, KB.
Maddie's going to be banging on the door. What are you doing in there?
Well, the Edwards' ability to dunk and then also just pull up from the volleyball line was just incredible.
He was fun. He was a very fun player.
What
He
a
was
special talent.
I mean, he could really jump too. I mean, sitting courtside, that's where our media seating was at the other assembly hall. I mean, it was incredible.
That whole team was fun to watch.
Yeah, him and Klein. I mean, Grady Eifert, shout out to Notre Dame assistant right now in the starting lineup there. To get back on track here, Indiana, Ohio State, 3:45. That's CBS tomorrow. Again, the bubble-ish nature to the game. We'll hit it on the other side. I mean, it's massive. What it means, if you look at any sort of bracketology right now, both of these teams are right there on the bubble, and you got some Big Ten seeding. So just a reminder here, the winner of this game will be the 9 seed in the Big Ten tournament. That means they'll play in the same slot the Indiana women played in yesterday, noon on Thursday. The loser falls to the 10 seed, and that means you play a night earlier. You'll play Wednesday night, and basically you'll be in the night session, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whereas if you're the 9 seed, you'll be in the noon game Thursday. If you win that, you'd be the noon game Friday. So from planning purposes as well as bubble purposes, this one matters a whole lot.
All right. Also last night, Big Ten, Michigan State clinches the outright regular season title. They rallied on the road to beat Iowa 91-84. Tom Izzo just keeps clicking right along, KB. Just keeps clicking right along.
No shock there. And they weren't thought to be that type of team at the start of the year, right? I mean, they weren't picked to finish, I think, that high, and certainly weren't thought to be, this type of Michigan State team. So Izzo in March, right? Isn't that the safe bet?
That's how it works. All right, coming up in just a moment, we'll get back to the Colts. They got a lot of decisions to make and maybe some opportunities today that did not exist when the day started yesterday. We'll look at all of them as we continue on the Fan Morning Show with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton. I'm Jeff Rickard. It's 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
All right, pop quiz and a few Jiffy Lube oil change on a Friday.
Freebie.
Free, exactly. What would a Trey Hendrickson trade mean for the Colts? We'll hit on that here in just a second. But again, to remind everybody on the Indiana front for tomorrow, 3:45 tip down at Assembly Hall. That is a CBS game for that one. I believe you'll get Spiro Ditas and Jim Spinarkle on the call. So that's kind of a NCAA tournament type of crew there from Assembly Hall. Right now, Joe Lunardi has Indiana as the 66th team in the field. Okay? Ohio State he has as team 63. So he's got IU going to Dayton, Ohio State just outside of Dayton in the exact field. And the game tomorrow, from a metric standpoint, again, we're getting very nerdy. I apologize here. For Ohio State, it's a quad 1 road win. For Indiana, it's a quad 2 home win. That's what's at stake. Indiana's got no quad 2 losses, no quad 3 losses.
Which is one of the things that's helping them
quad 4
right
losses.
now. Yeah.
So for Indiana, it's the ability to continue to keep away from all of that. I would think that would look pretty good on the resume. I think a win tomorrow would lock it up. I mean, they might go to Dayton, but that is what is very enticing for Indiana. And again, it's kind of two birds with one stone here. A win with that would keep Ohio State away from a road quad 1 win. So it is massive tomorrow in Assembly Hall.
And Indiana also, if they lose that game tomorrow, not only do they just go back on the bubble, but now your fate is in probably the hands of 3 or 4 other teams at that point in time.
Well, one thing to note, and again, Mark, maybe next week we should probably have a bracket person on, but like if you look at the bubble right now, there are not a ton of mid-major teams like on the bubble. So, I bring that up to say like you probably don't have a lot of the bid stealing per se of like, out west, you probably want St. Mary's or Gonzaga to win that conference. I think we're kind of used to that here over recent years. But like by all accounts, it seems like Drake would even be a bit of a long shot to get in if they don't win the Missouri Valley. So you don't have a lot of those teams hovering around the bubble. I will say one thing to note on Lenardi's latest, he has Purdue as a 3 seed, at Lucas Oil here, and Kelvin Sampson would be the one.
That's a tough one to start with.
Oh, Lord, yeah, that would be tough. But, I mean, going back to IU, I think what you saw for, 38 minutes the other night against Oregon is what you'd like to see more of. Is just, again, can you get over the hump at the end? Because their margin for error isn't that wide. And so that's why I think the Oregon loss kind of stings so much, because they had played such good basketball. They had gone tit for tat, and then at that final hump, they just couldn't get over. And part of that is, Oregon guard hits a shot from Portland, and you're like, all right, well, take that on the chin. So we'll see how they bounce back and they respond. But I will say they have been playing a lot better as of late, and I would expect, certain guys, Trey Galloway in particular, to continue to kind of lead that charge.
I think that's a good point to bring up about the Oregon game on Tuesday night. For those that went to bed and see the final score of them losing by 9, that was not a 9-point loss in how they played.
It was right there until, about a minute and a half to go?
James just pointed out they had a lead of 90 seconds to go. So, yeah, certainly Indiana over the last couple of weeks, they definitely have played better. And Ohio State's been a weird team. I remember that game that those two teams played earlier this year. They played on a Friday night. It was an ugly game. Indiana had built like a big second-half lead, and then it was just a struggle fest to try and close that out. The game went into overtime, and Luke Goody hit a huge shot there to get that road win. So sweeping a bubble team would obviously look pretty good for Indiana.
Mark, you interested in a Purdue-Indiana?
Of course.
2-leg parlay this weekend?
Sure. What could go wrong? Mike Woodson's not broken my heart before.
Probably too early, right, to get the line on that, though,
way too
with
early.
Indiana?
Let me ask the Illinois guy, though. You surprised that it's just a 4.5-point spread?
No, I'm not too surprised. Again, the team has been too up and down for me to expect a lot of consistency. I mean, we could see a good version of Illinois tonight, a bad version. I know for a lot of people listening, they want to see the bad version.
James, you and I, we talked earlier about the Trey Hendrickson trade. I do want to make sure for our audience that didn't hear that conversation, what would it mean to others this offseason for the Colts? So let's say the Colts do this, and let's play it out. Let's go with your trade scenario. A second-round pick this year, a third-rounder next year. Right now, $41 million in cap space. Let's say the Trey Hendrickson contract hovers around $30 million. I think that means Braden Smith is gone. What else does it mean? Do you stop there, or do you put any other, like, what does it mean for Will Fries? I would assume it means Dio Dengbo is definitely gone, considering that's another defensive lineman. I guess what would be the trickle-down effect if the Colts did make this trade?
Well, my question would be, I know people keep talking about how much his contract would cost in cap space, but wouldn't his cap hit be what he's making in 2025? And then the extension wouldn't kick in until 2026?
Yeah, I guess it depends how you want to structure it.
Yeah, it's completely up to you and how you put it together.
So I would definitely try to say, hey, we'll just pay you the 15, this year, keep that cap hit a little bit lower, and then it jumps next year, which plays with the money a little bit for cap space. But overall, I think if you bring in Trey Hendrickson, you say bye to Braden Smith, you say Dio, obviously you're gone in free agency, and you might be looking at Will Fries like, how much do you love Indianapolis? Because at that point, I don't know. It'd be very hard to pay him, a hefty price. And then as Mark pointed out so eloquently earlier, you'd have two guards making a ton of money in a league that typically guards don't make that kind of money.
So Fries gone, Braden Smith gone, Ryan Kelly back? Or is he gone too?
It starts
to
get dicey if you do that.
So then if all three are gone, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I just want to explain the reality of what this would mean.
Yeah.
Then if those three are gone, you have three new starting offensive linemen in Anthony Richardson's most critical season as a pro.
I know.
And you still got to pay a guy to compete with him.
Well, and I don't know who those starting three would be. I only see two in-house. Bordellini would be your center, right? And then Matt Gonzalez would be your right tackle, right guard, I guess. Are you bringing back Mark Glowinski? Is Danny Pinter a re-sign?
Maybe you're drafting. I don't know.
Maybe you're drafting
this
an
is
offensive
why,
lineman at 14.
Yeah, this is why when you lay it out like that, I just don't think the Trey Hendrickson thing is that real. I understand that he played for Lou Anarumo and his college coach was Charlie Partridge, who was the Colts defensive line coach. But, despite all those connections, it does not, to me, seem like a very smart move when you're considering that you have, in my opinion, you have to do whatever it takes to try to help Anthony Richardson. And to Jeff's point, get off the field, that helps him, but also tangibly help him with players who could help raise his level of play. Tight end, offensive line, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it seems to me like you'd want to continue to build and solidify that offensive line, maybe draft a guy like Tyler Warren. You give that to Anthony Richardson, and then you try to pick up some legitimate NFL players that aren't nearly as costly on the defensive side of the football, and then draft a couple of young guys as well. That's kind of what you're looking at, I think.
Noon on Monday. That's when the tampering begins. 4 o'clock Wednesday is the new league year. So we did see Raekwon Davis cut yesterday. I would ask James Boyd for his favorite Raekwon Davis memory, but I don't want to put him into that position. I mean this all seriousness. I remember the penalties more than I remember any play.
I do, in all seriousness. He was a great locker room guy, very funny guy, but obviously you'd like to see more on Sundays.
When the penalties happened, I was like, gosh, I forgot he's on the team. But he did play 300 snaps last season.
But what was the production for those 300 snaps?
Taven, only had seven solo tackles. Taven Bryan also played about 300 snaps. So, again, I know it's maybe not top of mind to a lot of people right now, but they will do something at defensive tackle this offseason. And Lou Anarumo, for what it's worth, he had a bunch of big dudes in Cincinnati. Like real big dudes, like 315, 20, 30-pounders. Colts don't really have, Raekwon Davis is one of the few. So that will be, I think, an item that the Colts at some point try and find here this offseason.
I want to see Kevin Bowen tell Grover Stewart he's not a big dude.
You know what I mean. Grover is one of the, I say this about Grover and Buckner. They are two of the most unbelievably carrying
ripped
of weight,
dudes.
300-pound individuals you ever see.
Yeah.
They're ripped.
Buckner is
God's favorite. That's what I call him.
Yeah, that is the exact way to describe him. DeForest Buckner is a skinny 290-pounder.
Yeah, he looks like an action figure. But I was just pointing out that Grover Stewart,
But Grover carries his weight well.
Oh, he does. He does. I was just saying,
I look like Peppa Pig's father. That's what Rosie Bowen has told me before.
Wow, that's a compliment.
I like that.
I think she means that in a good way.
I like Daddy Pig, to be honest with you. Grover Stewart, he looks like the Incredible Hulk, Buzz Lightyear. Who else can we throw out there?
Yeah.
Bowser.
Who's your favorite WWE guy like that, Mark?
The big guy that they have right now is Gunther. He's a big Austrian dude. It's like him. Huge dude, svelte.
I remember when he got in the ring at Lucas Oil, Mark.
Oh, yeah?
Was he the one I liked?
Yeah, you're a big fan.
And then
him and Jey Uso. You
then
like
when
yeet.
Was he the one I
when
liked?
Speed came out, I thought it was EJ Speed for a second.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
my goodness.
James Boyd can back me on this. EJ Speed would get in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
He would do that. He would do that.
Yeah.
Yes, he would do that.
Braun Breaker destroyed Speed. That is still one of the more insane tackles I've seen in a wrestling ring.
Yeah.
But Speed was the one where, was it the Japanese guy that got scared or something? And that's when Speed came in?
No, he got beat up. He got beat up
That
entering.
was
and
what
then-
it makes you scared.
And then Speed came out and
Speed
got
came out,
wrecked
yeah.
by Braun Breaker.
I'm not gonna
Mhm.
lie, KB. This is the most dad conversation because this is what I have with my parents. Like, wait, whose name was that? What he looked like? And whatchamacallit? That's pretty much how this last conversation is going.
Mark, I gave it a great
That's why
effort.
we have
I
Mark.
thought. I was locked in for 3 hours.
You were solid.
we go.
I appreciate it.
All right, coming up in a moment, the Freebie Friday, the Jiffy Lube prize pack on the way, the shortened, abbreviated pop quiz. In the absence of Scotty J, we'll do it next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I feel like giving some away, Kev. What do you think? Freebie Friday?
I like where your head's coming from.
James, you okay with that?
I'm definitely okay with that.
All right, we will tell you that Scotty J is off this week. He's on vacation, hopefully relaxing and resting somewhere. Was sending emails out about a couple of things on Wednesday. I'm like, you're on vacation, dude. Chill. It's okay. But Mark Dykton and Kevin Bowen, I think, have come up with a pop quiz this morning. Have you not?
We have.
Wrote it in crayon.
Mark did 3 questions. I did 2, and we happen to have one of them being the same question.
So we lobbed it off and made it just a 3-question pop quiz.
Which is okay. 239-1070 is the number to call, as people know by now. If not, you still have a chance to get in on there. Do we have some contestants to choose
we do.
from,
Let's
Mark?
make it official real quick, though.
All right.
Before we get to the pop quiz, do they still teach triple threat position in basketball when you were growing up?
Yeah.
I mean, I learned it.
Okay. What do you think? I just got this picture from Max's daycare. You think Max Bowen's doing a little early triple threat? Or
Oh, I like that.
Or does he need to get the ball maybe more in the pocket?
More impressively, he's holding the little basketball, but he's got
I
got
feel
the
like he's
lace.
holding it well.
Yeah, he's holding
got
it
his,
exactly
you
like
see
he
his Pacers
should.
pants on. Mom put him in his
Yeah.
Pacers pants. I don't think she knows they lost last night.
It's not the laces, but he's got his hands appropriately placed on the stripes there.
I
What do
don't
you
know,
think?
man. I'm getting the bucket on him.
Oh my!
I'm locking that up.
You're gonna reject it. Wow.
Kid's 2.5 years old.
James is postering a child.
James today has bragged about dunking on a kid and being able to take his old man. That's what we've got going on today.
Pretty much, but no, cute.
I mean, it's one thing to take a shot at your dad, it's another to take a shot at someone else's 2.5-year-old son.
He's
No.
showing you a cute picture, and you're
Look,
like,
man,
I can take
Tell you
it.
what, if you try and cross him, he'll pull those chompers out,
Look,
and next thing you know, you're going to need new ACL.
I was gonna say, if he's growing up in this Indiana basketball vibe, it'll build great character for him. But no, he looks amazing. I mean, I do think that his form looked pretty good. Honestly, I didn't learn how to shoot, so I was probably in high school, and I still probably don't shoot as well as I want to.
By the way, I feel like it's been a while since we've had a Jim Irsay football-related tweet, and I guess I should say, like, in regards to, like, the actual 2024-2025 Colts team. This from Irsay just a minute ago. 14 losing seasons as we enter season 42 in Indy. Not good enough. 2 Super Bowl appearances. 1 win. Not good enough. Colts will be back. Our fans deserve better. Exclamation point, thumbs up, football emoji.
Well, what would you say?
Tweets are cheap.
Yeah.
Spend some money in free agency.
If you tweeted him back, Kevin, what would you say?
Yeah, again, I probably was wrong in saying, like, we haven't seen many football-related tweets in regards to the current iteration of the Colts. That, to me, is all just kind of like historical stuff, right?
Yeah, more or less.
Not maybe a lot of, like, 2025-centric. We're in the worst playoff drought our franchise has been in 30 years, haven't won the division in 10 years. Only 3 teams in the NFL have a longer playoff drought than you, et cetera, et cetera.
It's time to fix the place up, Kev.
We'll see what happens on Monday.
All right. Do we have a contestant, my man?
We do. Pick a number 1 through 8. We got loaded phone lines.
James?
5.
5 goes to Music Mac.
Music Mac. Kevin, you have the honors and the questions, I might add.
What's up, Music Mac? It's been a while, brother.
How you doing?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. Been enjoying the show this morning.
Thank you. We appreciate that. It's a 3-question pop quiz. Mark Dykton and I. You imagine like being a 4th grader and Mark Dykton and I walk in as your tag team substitute teachers for the day.
I'm just waiting for the TV to roll in too to turn
I
on
was
like
gonna
Bill
say.
Nye the Science Guy or
Do
something.
they still have the audio-visual guy that has
Bill Nye the Science Guy. Mark, we'd be watching the Missouri Valley. We're
true.
watching Arch
You
Madness
kids are about
or
to watch some
something.
history.
Music Mac. Mark Dykton's going to throw. Actually, Mark, how should we do it? Yeah, you go ahead and throw number 1 at Music Mac.
Okay. I got to pull up the quiz now because I didn't have it readily available, but that's fine.
Nothing says you're a great teacher,
I
like
know.
not even knowing
This
what,
is true. This is
I
so
know.
true.
what material you put on
Turn
the
to
test.
chapter 5. What were you kids reading? All right, Music Mac. Former Pacer George Niang scored 24 points off the bench for the Hawks in their 124-118 win over the Pacers. Who's the other former Pacer who came off the bench and scored 8 points for Atlanta last night?
You didn't even give him multiple choice, man.
No.
You're a meaner substitute
Wow.
teacher
Yeah,
than
he's
I
a
thought.
I mean, you got to
horrible
think about
teacher.
current.
He's coming off the top
He
rope.
was acquired by the Pacers via trade. Had some health issues. I'm kind of leading him to water right now, aren't I?
Boy, he had a scary situation with the was it in his kidney where he had the cancerous?
I believe so.
When he came here, played at Michigan.
His time was short in Indiana.
Where were the Olympics this year? Or last year?
Paris. Yeah.
God, I'm just drawing them.
Music
the
Mac,
guy
we'd hand you the answers, but
Can we say he's a Michigan man?
If that
I
helps.
thought I
So is he the guy that we drafted and he left and came back?
Do you think it's Karis LeVert?
Yeah.
Boy.
Number
of left
2
field, way
here.
to
I
go.
mean, Mark, we're just trying to get to the final bell of the day, man, here. All right, IU women, dominant win over Oregon yesterday in the women's Big Ten tournament. That was 9-8. They will now face the number 1 seed. Jake had their head coach on yesterday. Who are they playing today?
Southern Cal.
Boom. All right, Music Mac. There's only 3 questions, so this is for all the marbles, even though you get the prize, even if you
Number 1 was
lose this
unbelievable.
one. I'll calm down. The last mid-major, because Kevin's going to cry with this question. The last mid-major to make an men's NCAA tournament from Indiana was who? Valparaiso, Indiana State, Ball State, or IPFW?
Valparaiso.
Look at that!
Yeah.
Music Mac!
Woo!
Man!
That is a Friday dub, my friends.
I mean, those were legit 2 and 3. One was, boy.
One was legit. It might have been a tough number 1, but it was still legit.
You didn't even give him multiple
yeah, you
guesses
got to
on
get
that.
multiple choice.
No. There's only so many former Pacers still rolling around in the league.
See, Mark's that professor. When I got the review at the end of college, and you're like, "Oh, grade your professor," I would just rip him, rip him. Get this person out of here.
RateMyProfessor.com.
Yeah.
That's a W. That's E1.
Music
there,
Mac,
Music
you
Mac.
got the freebie, man. Good job. You earned it, but you get it anyway. So congratulations and thanks for being a part of it and listening this morning. Appreciate it. All right, KB. Yeah, I thought the Karis LeVert, I thought that was a nice little entree there, even though he didn't have multiple guests. It wasn't too hard, was it?
I kind of thought the Paris thing he might get. I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously that didn't
I remember
really-
watching him at the Big Ten tournament
Very true.
over at the field house.
Certainly. That was that the Michigan team that lost to Louisville in the national title? Or was that not?
I don't think so because
No.
I want to say
That
that
wasn't
was
Trey
like
Burke?
the Spike Albrecht team, and
Yeah.
he's not as old as
Levert's a little younger than
Yeah.
that.
Spike was one of those 7-year guys before it was cool
Was
to be a
Glenn
7-year
Robinson
guy, wasn't
on the national title team?
I believe so. I believe he was.
Jordan Morgan, was that the big dude?
Yeah, that was a fun team. I remember Trey
Man,
Burke.
Trey Burke was a great
Woo,
college
the
player.
shots that he made.
Great college player. Speaking of college-wise, getting you set again. Purdue, Illinois tonight, 8 o'clock. Purdue a 3.5-point underdog. Cannot reiterate enough how massive tomorrow is in Assembly Hall for Indiana and their tournament chances. Even if you want to get out of Dayton, I think tomorrow and probably 1 in Indy is really critical for them. So that's 3:45 down there. Pacers back in action. That's 7:30 tomorrow night against the Hawks. Halliburton will obviously see his status after not playing last night, and a busy Friday and Saturday. Sectional hoops, fingers crossed, good weather across the street.
I wish I was going to go to that game out in Carmel tonight, but I got to go to a dinner tonight. So
I wonder why. Happy
It's
birthday,
your
Jeff.
birthday,
It's
Jeff.
right.
That's
Look
right.
at this
Come
guy.
on, you can't bury the lead.
Going,
right.
Yeah, no, my mom's in town. We're going to go take her out to dinner. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So
Thanks
is it,
for
one of,
hanging out.
is it one of those things where like,
Do you have a
your-
gift coming?
I don't know because I want to go on a nice vacation. That's our
Fair.
deal now. No
That's
gifts
fair.
at birthdays. Let's
Memories
just go on.
instead of tangible objects?
Absolutely, we're at that. But we got everything we need. We've been around for a while. We got all the
Hey,
stuff we need.
I'm way more shallow than that. I need it all, baby. Need it all.
Get your new Wilson Evolution.
There you go.
All right, Mark. How much time do we have before we have to get out of
40
here?
seconds.
40 seconds here. So we've got women's college basketball over at the field house.
Today, noon today is that USC game.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So if I ask you, are you going in on a Purdue Illinois?
I have to see those spreads
Parlay.
first of all. I don't know. We'll see. If I do, I'll put it out on Twitter. How about that?
I might put it both to win outright. To be honest with you.
Oh, boy.
How about that?
Oh, boy.
You
All right.
disrespecting my alma mater, but I'll accept it.
All right. We got to run. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again Monday morning.